Welcome to Sacred Realms. It's a great day in Hyrule, y'all. Welcome to Sacred Realms, a Zelda Retrospective Podcast. I'm your host, Lyndon Willoughby, joined for this excellent, spicy, tasty recap episode by my co-host, Matt Willoughby. Matt, do you concur that the contents of this recap episode should in all likelihood be spicy, tasty, bold, daring?
As the flavor profile of my favorite kind of margarita, honestly. I'm a big fan of a spicy marg, so yes, I am there for that.
I would not say that the spicy marg is my personal favorite variety of marg. I can be in the mood.
If there is a spicy marg on the menu, I am going to try the spicy marg.
Are you like a jalapeno margsman? Do you prefer more of like a mango?
So I'm a big fan of a mango habanero because you get the sweet with the spicy and you put like some chili salt on the rim. So you get like even more of the little kick from the salt, which I also salted rim for margaritas. There is no other way in my opinion, but, no, dude, mango habanero.
I've actually been doing tahini in place of salt on my margs as of late.
You and my fiance share that, and
I'm on the tahini train too.
I like tahini, don't get me wrong, but I still just prefer a classic salt. I don't know, it's just got a classic pairing with the marg that I just prefer more. I will never fault anyone for their tahini choice.
Matt, let me run a marg by you real quick. As a margsman.
Run.
Picture this.
Yes.
A little jalapeno, a little pineapple. Yeah. So jalapeno, pineapple margarita, a little tahini on the rim, a little bit of Grand Marnier.
Oh, yeah.
Just to dice off on the top.
Get some grandma on there.
That is a margsman's marg.
Yeah.
Grand Marnier.
So one of my favorite margaritas I ever had was at this place in Dallas called Fire and Fork, or Fork and Fire, whatever it is, I don't remember. And they have a mezcal Rita, and it is a mezcal jalapeno pineapple with a egg white shaken in it, so it gets that smooth frothy texture, like almost like a whiskey sour. And that is a very good $16 margarita that I only have very, very occasionally.
You know, for as much as I like whiskey, I should love mezcal. And
it's very different.
I'm just not there yet.
It's more scotchy, but it's even more harsh than scotch. I don't like mezcal by itself, but when you put a mezcal in a drink like that, that's got a sweetness of the pineapple to offset it, some spiciness of the jalapeno to pair with the smokiness of the mezcal, it all just kind of comes together well. And then the smooth texture from the egg white, chef's kiss. Very good.
That all sounds amazing. But you know, as much as I do love tequila, I love a good mezcal. Like whenever I wear my bandolier and my chaps and saunter into a saloon in old Mexico, I feel like you got to ask for a mezcal.
As you do frequently, all the time. Yeah.
If I had a nickel for every time that I saw Mike walk into a saloon wearing a bandolier, chaps, and nothing else.
I was about to say, there's nothing else other than those two things.
Don't act like you don't like it.
He always looks confused. He's like, I don't think this is the kind of place I'm meant to end up in.
He was looking for a different kind of dungeon or bar.
All right, this has been Mixology with the Willoughby brothers and our guest of the evening, who needs no introduction, the detective himself, Mike, who arrives at the turn of the tide, or maybe not, to help us figure out where the heck we're putting this game. Welcome back to the show, Mike.
Happy to be here, and where we're putting this game is back on the shelf where it belongs.
Amen to that. Never to be touched again.
Yeah, it's tough to argue with. Mike, what do you say are the chances that this episode of the pod will have a musical interlude courtesy of yourself? I know that was a big hit with our listeners last
Everyone loved that.
Was it really?
Yeah, everyone loved it.
I don't know, guys. That was kind of spur of the moment. We'll see how the night plays out and how much ranch water you give
Don't
me.
force it. Like, if it's forced, it's not good. It's got to be a spur of the moment as the spirit moves you, so they say.
Like Johnny Depp in the first Pirates of the Caribbean movie. You can't capture lightning in a bottle that way quite the same again. Like they tried.
I thought he did pretty good in that other two.
There was an attempt, but it just wasn't quite.
The first
there.
Pirates is definitely the best Pirates. There's no doubt about that. But I feel like Johnny Depp was still a highlight of the other two movies. We don't talk about the fourth one.
Right. We don't talk about the fourth. And I think Johnny was solid through all three. Everything else became less solid as we went on.
Mm-hmm. Except Barbossa was also really good in the third one.
Barbossa was good.
He was really good in the third one.
Cool
so
character.
Great.
And Keira Knightley's Keira Knightley.
Obviously.
And
look, Orlando Bloom is also really great, but I feel like the writing didn't like measure up to the task of those actors. You know what I mean?
Poor Orlando Bloom has a history of like charismatic but slightly underwritten roles.
Very underwritten. Yeah.
They run as if the whips of the masters are behind them.
They're taking the hobbits to Isengard. They're taking the hobbits to Isengard. Okay, are we here to talk about Zelda, or are we just going to talk about random things the rest of the day?
Sometimes
we got the rare Pirates of the Caribbean, Lord of the Rings double feature reference. So.
I don't know that we've ever done the double feature.
Yeah, we've had them both individually, but never together. So this is a good and important moment.
It was worth it.
To Matt's point, we're not here to talk about Pirates of the Caribbean, Lord of the Rings, or mixology, even though we love all of those things.
I was about to say those are three of our favorite things. They're up there.
Are here. Pirates of the Caribbean's a distant third on that list. Okay. We are here to talk about The Legend of Zelda. Last week, we wrapped up our time with The Legend of Zelda Phantom Hourglass, and you know what that means? It's the time in the season where we go back through our final thoughts on the game, and at the very end, we rank it amongst the other games that we've already played, which is going to be a very interesting time. I think Matt and I are still trying to figure out exactly where we land as far as that question is concerned. Of course, last week, any listeners will know, we had a situation arise where our guest of the evening tonight, Mike, has not played Zelda 2, which...
Sorry, not sorry.
Yeah, it's tough to blame you. Which does make the voting process difficult. If Matt and I were to find ourselves in a deadlock over whether or not Phantom Hourglass comes above Zelda 2 in the ranking, then we would have an issue, right? Because there would be no tiebreaker. That's why we have a third person involved in this. But anyone who listened last week knows that Max, our frequent returning guest, did cast a vote last week. Max is functioning as our tiebreaker if one is needed. I cut that audio out of last week's episode. So at the end of this episode, whenever we get to that discussion, I'll drop it in here, and all of you will know which way Max voted. We have a lot of discussion to get into before that happens, though. Before we get into housekeeping and then the Sacred Realms recap, Mike, I want to catch up with you real quick because the last time we had you on was the Temple of Ice, notable high point in this game. Mm-hmm. And we've played Muto's Temple and the end of the game since that time. So I would love to get just some general thoughts from you on those two experiences and just, I don't know, kind of what your general thoughts are in terms of how this game wrapped up and if you found it to be satisfying or not.
I really did enjoy the Ice Temple for the episode that I was on, and I was riding kind of a high on the game at that point. Follow that up with Muto's Temple, and I actually really enjoyed Muto's Temple. The kind of Egyptian theme, the different puzzle mechanics it used with the raising and lowering of the water on the surface island. I kept way too many notes because I was expecting it to get real deep in the notes based on everything else with the game. So I'm writing down like all the letters of all the dudes' names and whether they're the first, third, fourth, whatever night.
I thought for sure the order of the knights would come in at some point.
And so I'm over here preparing and like writing a small journal. And then we finally get over there. I'm like, I didn't need any of that. I'm like, dang it. But I still really enjoyed the temple as a whole, the overworld of that island. I really enjoyed that boss, the mech. A mechanical issue I ran into on that, and I don't know if y'all touched on that in your episode, is that top little button he had, or the weak point, it's super hard to hit with the stylus. And so I'm over here like acting like an idiot, again, in bed with my wife at like 10:30 p.m. and she's trying to sleep and she's like, stop!
Getting yourself in trouble all over again.
I love you. I'll do the dishes more. And so I'm trying to like balance life and my relationship and Zelda, and it's really difficult.
As we all are at all times.
Yes. And so I really enjoyed the end of Muto's Temple, but it was tempered by what I knew to be going back to the Temple of the Ocean King for the last time. I kind of enjoy getting the sword made. That's cool. I wish they would have done more with that. Personally. Then you go back to the Temple of the Ocean King, and I had a very unfortunate issue with the Temple of the Ocean King, is that I hadn't really worried about my time so much on that first half or quarter, whatever it is, of the dungeon for the previous couple runs, because I had enough time to make it. I was just cutting it very close. Well, I realized with this current playthrough that was not going to cut it. And so I had to go back and do the whole thing again, which caused what I would call a detriment to my enjoyment of that particular aspect of the game. And then you get through the end of it. There's that one cool room where you have the several waves of the knights. And apparently I'm not the genius I thought I was by throwing a pot in the hole and using that to get them. But that was all gravy. The ending of the game left me somewhat meh, which kind of sounds like the consensus I'm gathering from your not so subtle hints and just outright dislike. I didn't hate the end of the game like certain people do. And I thought that the possessed Linebeck was a pretty cool fight. I liked Bellum down there with the multiple tiers. That felt like a really cool kind of classic Zelda boss fight. Did you already talk about the end of the game on the last episode?
Yeah.
And I apologize, Discord and other people. I did not catch up on this episode. It's been a whirlwind of a week. But I wasn't super thrilled about you've been in a pocket universe. Bye. You can add the tingle noise there where he says bye again.
Yeah. Bye.
But
this Beetle, by the way.
Beetle?
This Beetle that does that.
Well, good thing Tingle doesn't do it. That just adds creepy to his character. Mm-hmm. But I didn't mind the very end. I didn't hate it. I didn't love it. I like that you meet back up with the pirate crew. And I thought it was an interesting choice that they have just a few minutes having passed. I didn't think of that as a real negative. But talking with you guys, it sounds like y'all are on kind of different planes with that. I did like the scene of Linebeck, regardless of whether he just entered our universe, is returning to our universe, sails away in the ship. I thought that was just a nice nod. I liked his character arc. He's no Groose, but he was still pretty good. So I come out with a net positive on this game.
But who is Groose? Like, who is Groose besides Groose?
There's only one Groose.
There's
only one Groose.
It's a Highlander situation.
There can only be one.
Exactly.
Groose.
No, I think we are pretty much aligned there. I don't think the fact that it took place over 10-ish minutes bothered us. It was just the simple fact that it was a separate reality, a la Link's Awakening, that was just executed horrendously poorly, and in our opinion. So I think other than that, we're aligned really on thoughts there.
Yep, I'd say so. Thanks for catching us up with where you're at with things, Mike. Obviously, we'll be delving into individual elements of all these things a little bit more in the Sacred Realms recap. Let's go ahead and get the housekeeping out of the way so that we can dive right into it. If you didn't know, Sacred Realms is a weekly re-examination of The Legend of Zelda, one little slice at a time. Sacred Realms drops every Wednesday and is available on all major podcast networks. Every week, we play a new section of a Zelda game, and then we sit down here to talk and to drop our hot takes. If that sounds fun to you, please head over to Apple Podcasts, hit the subscribe button, and be sure to leave us a review. 5-star reviews are greatly appreciated, and they have a chance to get a shout out here on the show. If you want more Sacred Realms in your life, you can head over to patreon.com/Sacred Realms Pod to get access to our Discord channel, listener mail, vote on what game we played next, and much more. We did just get finished voting on what game we were going to play next, and if you haven't caught up via the Discord or the Patreon on the final results of that, the answer is Twilight Princess. We will be playing The Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess on the next season. That'd be season 10 of Sacred Realms podcast. Going to be a really fun time. Additionally, one of the benefits that we give to Master Sword patrons and above is that we read their names every week here on the show. Those legendary individuals are Cosmic Link, Jerry, Dante 2, Tom, Gavin, Andy, Stephanie, Billy, Connor, Rachel, Shepherd Street, Matthew, Chris, Daniel, Fallout 907, Kelso, Tiffany the Star, Daxel, Patrice, Stephanie, Darknuck, Il Maestro himself, Brian, George, Mike, Dylan, Lennon, Melanie, Kolku, Aiden, Rowan, Josh, Nick, Dante 1, Gep, Brittany, Davey, Haru the Mighty, Derek, Albert, Mark, Andy, Cameron, Ben, Daniel, Nick D _TV, Travis, Hyrule Interviews, aka Maximum Nichols, Garrett, and Drew. These are the most legendary of individuals. And what are we doing with these people this week? We didn't play any game.
Go into a pocket universe, do a whole big adventure, and then be spat back out into the real universe 10 minutes later, having affected nothing at all.
Yeah, we would do that with y'all any time of the day, whenever. I don't know.
Yeah. So y'all say that though, like it's a crappy thing, but how cool would it be to be able to just like blink off for a minute, go into a pocket universe and have a full ass adventure, and then show back up? You only missed your 10-minute break at work and you've already freaking like saved the galaxy or the sea.
See, in real life, I would be totally down for that.
100%.
Yes, that sounds like a really awesome daydream that I'm sure I've had at some point or another. But this isn't real life. This is a video game. So I just feel like it didn't mesh with me in the video game sense.
What?
So the eternal question is this the real life? Is this just fantasy? Turns
Caught
out
in a landslide.
No escape
from reality.
It turns out none of those things were true. It was kind of
your eyes,
Look up to the skies and see.
I'm just a poor boy.
I need no sympathy because I'm easy come, easy go, little high, little low. Anywhere the wind blows doesn't really matter to me.
And there's your musical interlude for the episode.
And it was organic. There you go.
Also, we're sorry to have bursted all of your eardrums with that.
In case anybody was like wondering throughout this entire stretch of pod whether or not any of us could hang with Freddie Mercury in terms of sheer vocal talent,
I feel like we answered that.
You now have a resounding answer to that question.
Just in mustache.
You, yes. Us, no.
Beautiful. I think you all have beautiful voices. Yeah, turns out it's a hodgepodge of all of those things. All right, y'all, let's go ahead and get into our discussion in the Sacred Realms recap. It's a 6-part analysis of the game we just got finished playing, where we break down several categories, and then at the very end, we rank the game against the other ones that we've played. Part 1 is the plot, where we talk about story happenings, especially now that the book is closed on Phantom Hourglass. And so I'm going to go around the table real quick, and we've already touched on this a little bit, but Mike, you're the guest of the evening, so I'm going to send it to you first. The story that Phantom Hourglass told, that we now know since we've completed it, do you, what are your thoughts and feelings on it? I mean, do you feel like it was a good Zelda story, a bad one, somewhere in the middle? Where are you at?
So, guys, I don't hate it. So the recap in my head, and forgive me if I miss any big story beats, is you and Tetra are sailing out to go explore the rest of the ocean, try and find a new home for your peoples, and chart the uncharted. While you're doing that, you hear about this ghost ship, which is clearly a thing. Tetra, being reckless, decides she's going to jump on the ship and do her own thing. You then fall into Pocket Universe, where you still link it up and save the whole Pocket Universe because that's how Link do. And you go forward, you meet a kindly old man who I could tell was a whale. This man has whale written all over him.
He has whale energy.
I'm like, man, you got big whale energy.
Ding. there's the episode title.
And so
Big whale energy.
And so you help out Mr. Big Whale Energy and his 3 helpful spirits. And as you're doing this, you go to some really awesome dungeons. You see some peoples you've never seen before, which maybe that's a hint at Pocket Universe, because where do these races come from? I mean, I'm just saying there's some hints to maybe Pocket Universe. And you finally get through with all this, and then you fight the big bad and save Whale God, which I guess we'll just call him Whale God.
Yeah, I think his name is still Aushus.
Aushus the Whale God.
The Ocean King. He's still the Ocean
King. He's
King.
Whale God. So you save Whale God, and then your boy Linebeck gets a new ship because he's put up with you this long, and he sails off into the sunset, and you and Tetra are like, cool, that was a nice 10-minute nap. Let's carry on. Am I missing anything huge?
That's the thrust of it.
Yeah. Fair enough.
So I'm okay with that. Zelda has done Pocket Universe before, or alternate universe, in whatever shape it takes. Not unheard of. Didn't hate it. I felt like some of it was maybe a little forced toward the end, but for the majority of the game, I'm just having a good time. I don't think the plot blew me away. I think maybe of the things in this game to like rank high or low, I would kind of rank the plot middle to low. But there's other things that I think made up for it. So I'll pass it over.
Yeah, I'll go next. I think just in general, we'll get into more specific elements of the plot and the story as we go into the discussion. But generally, I don't have too much to add past what we were talking about last week. I think that overall, this game started off in a place where I was interested in the story. Like, I was interested in the story for reasons that were directly linked to its connections to the Wind Waker. Right. I wanted to know more about Link and Tetra's voyage in the untamed ocean past the, flooded Hyrule that we spent all of Wind Waker in. And because of that, I was sort of into it. I thought that the ghost ship was a compelling, malevolent force early in the game and was excited to see where that was going to go. And yeah, like all of these things together, even though the moment-to-moment gameplay didn't thrill me, and even though the characters were maybe not the all-time cast of Zelda characters that I was really looking for, that I do look for in Zelda games, because that's a really high bar, right? Even though I wasn't getting perfect 10s out of any of those things, or even 8s or 9s necessarily, I was there for the story. And that continued throughout most of the game, I would say. I never felt like the plot was ramping up in any kind of appreciable way to like drive my interest towards the end of the game. I thought the reveal of Bellum as the main bad guy was a little uninteresting, mostly because we just weren't given enough reasons to be invested in Bellum and its influence over this area of the sea. We other than the fact that Bellum had done something bad to the Ocean King, we really didn't have too much to go on in terms of getting emotionally invested in this Bellum is a bad character and we got to take him down. Like, it was something we were just doing because we were told we had to do it. And so that was disappointing. And then of course it all sort of ends on the note that it does, which is one that sort of invalidates all of the reasons that I was excited about the plot to begin with. Like, it turns out that none of the things that we were doing had any stakes relating to the actual world of the Great Sea in the way that I was hoping. We end the game exactly where we began it, which is we get the promise of Link and Tetra going out and exploring the wild, untamed ocean, and just being told that that's a thing that's going to happen, but we don't actually get to experience any of it. And so that rug getting pulled out from under the whole thing was unfortunate, and I really didn't appreciate it. It really does kind of drag down my whole, my whole final thoughts and impressions on the plot just as it exists on paper. I still think that there are some gems of story beats and contents and characters and stuff that are in here. Like, there are some good moments and there are some big Zelda feels at times, but overall it's just not able to hold a candle to anything that we've played so far, right? I mean, I would say even the plot of Zelda 2, this is a comparison that we're going to continue drawing probably throughout this entire episode, as we've been doing for the whole season. I would say even the plot of Zelda 2, where you're just trying to prove your worthiness to hold a piece of the Triforce, that to me is even more interesting than what this ended up being. So yeah, pretty down on it overall. How about you, Matt?
So Matt, real quick before you go, I just want to have Lyndon close your eyes for a minute and pretend you're Link. So if Link gets to this point, he's exploring with Tetra, trying to find new lands, explore the ocean, and a whale god appears to him and says, "Hey, Link, I have a pocket universe. It's in desperate need of your help. Will you please help me?" Are you, as Link, not jumping this pocket universe anyway?
No, for sure. But I think the thing that Lyndon and I are both down on is we like Link's Awakening, which is the same thing. Mm-hmm. It's a pocket universe, but the stakes are clear fairly early in that game of this is a dream. This is not real. But these people feel real because you're living in it. Is it unethical or wrong to wake up the windfish and dissipate this pocket universe and fix the problem to save yourself? Like, those stakes are clear. Whereas in this entire game, the stakes very much feel like I went through this whole game thinking I'm trying to save this area of the Great Sea because these people need saving, because this area of the Great Sea is real and they need help. And then to have that unceremoniously and out of the blue, and it's really, it just comes through the out of the blue nature of it, of just like, whoop, not real. You're just like,
so my counter argument is, are they not real in the universe in which they exist? Some philosophy for you.
Well, no, they're real. I think everything that happens in this game is real. It wasn't a dream, right? So I guess it does have stakes just because of that. It just doesn't have the stakes that I spent the entire game thinking that it had.
And investing in emotionally. Like this could be a new area for the people of our Great Sea to expand into, where we could help populate the rest of this island and further beyond. Like, this is not colonialism, but just like more area for people to proliferate and be, what's the word?
It's a story of recovery from the cataclysm that was the flooding of the Great Sea.
I do agree with you that I think that would be the better overall story, but maybe this is just me. But if I'm saving a pocket universe that needed help, I'm doing this not in a dream this time, but in a real life for these people that need it, and I'm saving them, regardless of whether it cost me time, although it's 10 minutes. I'm going to be like, job well done, Link.
Yeah, but tell me that up front.
Boy.
Like that, or at least hint at it. Like give me something to think about.
Yeah, I was going to say, build that up even throughout the last third of the game or something, because to me, that is the kind of thing that could have added those extra layers of interest going into the finale of the game that I wasn't getting just from the whole, oh, hey, the bad guy is Bellum and he did this thing to the Ocean King and you've got to go kill him.
It's so much harder to make me retroactively care about this as a pocket universe than it would have been to just at some point for it to be hinted at or revealed that, like, hey, this isn't actually part of the Great Sea. Like, because what they're trying to do is retroactively give you the same emotional stakes that Link's Awakening had. And like, there's just really no other way to look at it than they looked at how successful Link's Awakening was and said, let's just try to do that again, but make it a surprise. And what they missed out on was that wasn't the surprise, wasn't the part that was emotionally investing and interesting. It was the slow burn, the hints, the finally coming to the realization, still having a decent chunk of the game to go through when you're like, oh, this writes all of this that I did before and all the rest that I'm doing in a new light. You get that in a one line of dialogue at the very end of the game, and they're trying to retroactively do that, and it just doesn't, in my opinion, work. If it works for you, I'm really happy for you that it does, and I'm not saying you're wrong, but like for me, it just doesn't.
The way you're explaining it, I do understand where you're coming from, and I kind of get it. Correct me, Lyndon, if this is not the right place to talk about this, but are we good to continue?
Yeah.
Okay. So what I'm hearing from you, Matt, is that it would have been cool for you to have a couple lines of dialogue along the way of like Oshus asking, where'd you guys come from? Or Linebeck or someone. And you're like, oh, we came from the sunken land of Hyrule.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, we've never heard of that. And then as you progress a little bit more, you talk to someone else and you tell them about things you've seen in your travels. And they're like, well, that doesn't sound like anything we've ever seen here, but we've never been able to leave this little area. And then as you delve into a few more lines of dialogue, you find out that they're surrounded by the fog or whatever, and they've never left here before.
Absolutely. I think that would have been a really great and pretty dialogue simple way to add that emotional stake that is missing. And I actually am really glad you put it the way that you did, because this goes back to something I said last week, which goes to Linebeck's character and his finale with Ciela, and how there was no emotional catharsis there because he just leaves it blank and doesn't say anything. He doesn't have the just a very one-line, simple, I love you, I know moment, which is emotionally hugely impactful, but easy to do. Like, there's so many of those, what I would think would be fairly easy writing-wise to have added that just don't happen. And so it's like, it may be a minor thing by itself, but it all kind of adds up to just be a lot of missteps and fumbles that lead to a less than satisfactory story and character development throughout the course of the game, in my opinion.
I think my biggest thing coming out of this discussion is that I just never found myself caring about this pocket universe. Like, even when I still thought it was just a section of the Great Sea, you know, I didn't find myself overly invested in the population of this area. I never really found a character to latch onto that I was getting emotionally invested in, right? Like, we had gotten dialogue that was telling us if we don't defeat Bellum, then this area of the Great Sea is going to be like ruined and it will take over everything and whatnot. And the thing is, even before I knew about the Pocket Universe and I thought that we were just talking about another area of the Great Sea, I still was just not in it that much because this game does not do a good job of endearing you to the people that you're meeting and the locations that you're visiting. Like, going back to Link's Awakening, that game did a really good job of doing that, both before you know that it's a dream and after, right? Like, you meet multiple characters with multiple cool story arcs that you do become invested in. And then you've got like one kind of all-time great Zelda side character, which is Marin, who serves as like the I guess the confluence of all those feelings, right? And there was just nothing like that here. I think that could have been Linebeck. Again, going to the things you're saying, Mike, I think that if it had been handled differently, then Linebeck could have been that character because we spent enough time with him, like there was the opportunity, and Linebeck does have, like, there are stakes to his character depending on what happens to this area that you're trying to save, whether or not it's a pocket universe or not. And that was just never something that was really pulled off. And I do think that that's a problem.
Yeah, I think to add on to that, just to add one layer of context, was I cared about the fact that Gorons were here because I was like, I missed Gorons in Wind Waker. And like, this is where the Gorons are. Cool. I'm glad we finally found them. Zora's appeared, however briefly, like, oh, cool, they're still around. Like, I cared about most of this stuff in the context of I missed it from Wind Waker, or it feels similar to Wind Waker, or it could impact that storyline, which this game is a direct sequel to. Like, I was mostly caring about those things throughout the game in that context instead of in the context in which the game takes place, because I didn't know the context in which the game took place. So when it got like rug pulled, I was like, oh, all of the things that I was invested about for these characters in this story in this place doesn't matter the way that I thought it did.
Yeah, I think that's what it boils down to, is the way you thought it did. Like, it still means that Gorons are out there, Zoras, the Anuki, and I don't remember what their counterpart were that we massacre, but it doesn't matter.
The Uke.
We genocided the Uke, so they don't matter no more.
But they recovered. It's fine.
Sure. Yeah, they bounced back.
I like to think so. But you know what would have been a really cool story beat for me, kind of based on this conversation, is I had not thought a lot about it before, is if Linebeck had actually come from your realm, your ocean, and he had been stuck here by the ghost ship for, I don't know, years and years, hundreds of years, however you want to play that, and that he's actually been stuck here this whole time, and he just didn't want to talk to you about it until toward the very end because he never thought he would actually make it home, and then he doesn't realize until toward the end where you're actually going to be able to do this. And then that's why he leaves whenever the ghost ship's defeated in Bellum, because if you freed him from the bonds of this micro universe. I think that would have been a cool story beat.
Yeah. Linebeck, I think they tried to make Linebeck the emotional centerpiece of the game. He was definitely more of the emotional centerpiece than any other character, in my opinion.
So this actually sounds like a really good time to segue into conversations about some specific characters, right?
Sure.
And we're already talking about Linebeck. So, Matt, I'm going to let you keep going from where you left off. I mean, what do you think overall of Linebeck as a character and his role in the story?
Yeah, I mean, I felt like it was pretty good for the most part until, like I said, I feel like they really fumbled at the 1 yard line, and just like that football player who celebrated too early and jumped over the finish line, flipped the ball, and didn't actually get the touchdown. Like, that's how it felt to me with his ending with Ciela. Like, he was right there. And you've built up, especially over the last like hour and a half of gameplay, where he goes from being a coward who's avoiding his ex-girlfriend to being the one that's like, we're going to go chase the ghost ship and we're going to rescue Tetra and defeat Bellum. He's the one that says that, not Link and not Oshus and not Ciela. Linebeck says that. So then he's balls forward, captaining the ship up to the much larger ghost ship that's possessed by a sea demon, and he's like, let's go. And then he gets on the ship, on the wreckage with us, picks up the sword, is defending our unconscious body from Bellum, and to the point that he gets possessed by Bellum. Like, dude did a full 180 in an hour and a half. And then at the end, he goes back to being the emotionally handicapped, cowardly sea dog, and doesn't complete his journey with just a single line of anything except, I want my ship back so I can sail the sea. And like, we're supposed to take that as his end of his character arc. He's come full circle. He knows what he wants. It's not treasure. It's just sailing. But is it like, he's sailing the sea to get treasure. He's sailing the sea to find stuff for himself. He's still being a selfish, emotionally handicapped person, and doesn't complete the full journey to what he could have been. And so like, good all the way up till the very end, and then just drop the ball.
So Matt, I actually really agree with you on this point. I feel like he was kind of bridging that gap between comic relief and the emotional centerpiece for a lot of the game. And he mostly ended up, for me, on the comic relief side, especially his thing with Jolene. The very end would have been so easy for them to do maybe like 2 or 3 lines of heartfelt dialogue from him to really feel like you got the payoff for his character. The way I chose to look at it that made it not quite so crappy in my head was that the real him was the him that defended you from Bellum, kind of came out of his shell and did what needed to be done, and that the whole Linebeck persona is just like his shield he puts up. Like it's the persona he's created for himself. And you got to see a brief glimpse of what Linebeck really is and who he wants to be. But then once he finishes that part, he goes back to putting up that shield and decides, hey, I'm going to be this Linebeck again.
Yeah, to me, I don't really want to call Linebeck's character a complete failure. I think that overall there was something interesting happening there, and I did enjoy keeping up with him throughout the game. I agree with you, Matt, that it feels like we were building to a point of resolution with him. Not so, like, we keep coming back to Groose, and obviously Linebeck is a very different character than Groose and was going through different things, right? And so I wasn't looking for the same payoff that Groose got. I wasn't looking for the characters to end in the same place, but I was looking for a similarly nuanced journey for the character. And I just think that what we got with Linebeck was 2/3 of a complete character arc. It really feels like they were setting up a lot, and they were cashing in a lot on his likability as a character and a lot of the personality that he had, which I think was successfully portrayed. Like, I do think Linebeck is like a well-told character for the most part, but it's just, it's missing that last little bit of oomph that is really needed to make him an all-time great Zelda character. And that is a little disappointing. I do think, I'm going to give Linebeck, I guess, like a 7 out of 10 or so. Like, I think, he's good and fine, and I enjoyed moments during his story, but it just didn't come together in as satisfying of a way as I really wanted to. And it's even more disappointing because, we were having this conversation a lot about who is the companion character in this game. Well, I think the game would have you believe early on that it was Ciela, right? If for no other reason than just because Ciela's a fairy, and so we're able to contextualize her in that same way. Like, when you see that you have a fairy companion, immediately you're putting Ciela up against Midna and Navi and Tattle and, Fee and whoever else. And I think there's actually a real argument to be made that Linebeck is actually the one filling that role, because Ciela's character is kind of just not such of a much at the end of the day. And if we're looking at Linebeck through that lens, then I do think I mean, he's got to be pretty far down on the list of successful companion characters, right? All those other ones that I just mentioned, Navi, Midna, Fee, whatever, I think that they all have got better journeys and better stories than Linebeck does. And, half of the characters on that list precede Linebeck.
Actually, all of them precede Linebeck.
Fee does not.
Fee does not, you're right. But Midna does. Twilight Princess came out directly before this game. And it's the context of that primarily, which I am basing my harsher criticism of Linebeck's journey on, is Nintendo demonstrated directly before this game in Twilight Princess and even further before this game in Wind Waker that it can construct and write companion characters in the King of Red Lions and in Midna that have full, complete arcs that do not fumble the ball at the end, that carry it over the finish line in a very impactful and emotional way that is appropriate to the character. Linebeck didn't need a crying goodbye moment like we have with Midna or King of Red Lions. That's not Linebeck. But Linebeck needed a Han Solo moment because he's a Han Solo type character, right? He's that archetype. He's the rogue scoundrel out for himself who grows to encompass himself and his people to include you, the main character, and by extension Ciela. And it's mostly portrayed in his and Ciela's relationship, really, because our relationship with Linebeck is mostly him picking us up and shaking us around or whatever, or telling us to go into danger on his behalf to find treasure. All of that to say, they just didn't carry it over the finish line. And I think I'm coming down a lot harsher. And I'm not saying Linebeck was a complete failure. I don't think Linebeck was a complete failure. I think he was really great. It's just, it sucks to see his character fail at the finish line along with what I feel like most of this game fails at the finish line. And it all just is compounding on itself to make it more hard for me to swallow as a total package. And Linebeck is a really big emblem of that to me.
I mean, so speaking purely of the character of Linebeck, with what you said, Matt, I do think that you're kind of on the right line with a Han Solo type character. He's the rogue, kind of out for himself, but through a certain circumstances, he finds himself attached to the main character and kind of develops as he goes through there. I mean, 100% this is what Han Solo would have done end of A New Hope, like him and Chewie peace out, Luke, bye.
Yeah, and then show up at the very end to save him at the Death Star. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. It's almost beat for beat.
I mean, honestly, if they would have thrown in one scene of Linebeck looking out over the new sunrise, just being you did good, kid.
Speaking of Star Wars, TIE Fighter.
So what it really needed is just one scene with Linebeck looking out over the new sunrise after you defeated Bellum and being you did good, kid. You surprised me. You did good. And then just cut it off.
Yep. That would have been great.
Yep.
All we needed. So we touched on Ciela once or twice throughout this whole thing. And so let's go ahead and close out the whole companion character discussion. Does anybody have strong enough thoughts or feelings about Ciela to really get into here? Because I feel like this is kind of a really thinly drawn character that doesn't amount to much.
Her whole character is basically Deus Ex Machina as Fairy, and also let me repeat everything that's said 3 or 4 times to make sure that you understood it. And also throw some shade at Linebeck occasionally. That's her character to me.
I think that's the thing, though, is you've got to take her and Linebeck together to make that character. Mm-hmm. It was the banter between her and Linebeck that even kind of set Linebeck up as an enjoyable character.
I totally agree with that, yeah.
I didn't hate Ciela. I just didn't really care for Ciela.
Same.
I also think having the 3 available fairies kind of mind/imagination wise hurt Ciela for me, because it wasn't like she was your girl. She's kind of one of 3 fairies you've got chilling in your inventory, and she wasn't even my favorite.
Leaf all day, every day.
Leaf, dude. So Leaf's the fire boy, right?
Yes.
here's my biggest gripe with this entire game. Are you ready for it?
I think so.
I got 19 god dang fire crystal things.
Oh, no.
And I looked for the last 2 hours I played this game. I went back and searched islands I'd already been to. I played all the mini games I could find, hoping to get one more fire crystal, because all I wanted this entire game was to get the second upgrade for Leaf and see what happened. Didn't get it. And that made me just kind of hate life.
Do you want to know what the most disappointing thing about that story is, Mike?
Tell me about it.
Getting the second upgrade is basically useless because it doesn't improve your time to kill on any enemies.
What does it do for you?
It upgrades the power of your sword, but it doesn't help you defeat Bellum any faster. Yeah. Sorry, bud.
Yeah, I'm disheartened to hear you say that you spent so much energy trying to collect all those crystals and everything, because that was the thing that about 2/3 of the way through the game, I just sort of decided to myself I was not going to do anymore. Mostly because I went and looked up the rewards and found them to be not worth the effort.
Now, see, that's on me. I should have done that. I was trying to keep myself as much off the internet as I could for this game and just really experience the game the way I felt it was meant to be played. I would have been livid if I would have got this second upgrade and had to be so... man, give me like a fire whip. Give me like the ability to, swing and have flames come out like a small flamethrower or something.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Nope. It's just more attack power. Sorry, man.
Shame. And so since we did bring up the other two fairies, I mean, same thing. Could have been cool characters. Could have had more input from them after they join our party.
Yeah, but they weren't really characters. I feel like they were mostly inventory slot items. Like they feel more like... what's a comparable? They feel more like a blue tunic in Link to the Past, or a golden sword in Link's
Yeah, they do,
like,
and that's the problem.
Right. Like they should have just been that instead of characters.
No, you know what would have been cool? Make them characters, write some more dialogue, and have them be like the characters from Inside Out, where like they're each an emotion. And
that would have been fun.
Have like Leaf be like the angry little like, I'm coming for you. Bellum, I'm going to get you up.
He's the bloodthirsty fairy instead of Ciela.
Yes, have him be bloodthirsty. Have Ciela kind of be like the jack of all trades fairy. And then I don't even know the other fairy. I didn't care about them one bit. But
Nary.
Yeah, have Nary be like, peace and love, brother.
We should protect the Uke instead of genocide them. Leaf is over there like, genocide.
Maybe you should do both sides.
Yeah. No, I mean, yeah, nothing but missed opportunities there. I do think that it is a shame, because the idea of having 3 separate fairies in your inventory who are with your character for the entire back half of the game is a cool idea. And there are places that you could go with that, and there are places that we didn't go with that. So definitely disappointing. Let's talk about this game's version of Link.
He's there.
Yeah, he's there. This version of Link has got 1 or 2 moments of personality expressed entirely through like facial animations, mostly in those instances you're talking about, Matt, which is where Linebeck is like picking him up and shaking him or something like that.
Or he's dodging Oshus as he wildly swings the blade of the Phantom sword. He's like, ah!
But other than that, absolutely nothing to say about this version of Link. A very disappointing step backward for this specific character from what we saw in the Wind Waker, where there was a lot of personality happening and a lot of opportunities to kind of get a feel for who he is. And that just didn't happen here.
And man, his character motivation could have been equally compelling to what it was in Wind Waker, where in Wind Waker, he's trying to save his little sister and then just kind of shanghaied into saving the Great Sea. Like, he's trying to save his best friend and possible love interest, Tetra. Like, this should have been an emotionally compelling story and an emotionally compelling Link for that purpose, because we have a Tetra Zelda character that we're invested in who gets sidelined for the entire game. And Link seems fine about it after the initial shock when she gets abducted on the ghost ship. And he's just like going through the motions. It's weird. It's jarring considering who this Link is in historical comparison to Wind Waker. So yeah, definitely like a 3 out of 10 maximum for this Link, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, this version of Link is barely a step above The Legend of Zelda.
Yeah.
Right? Like, or Link to the Past or whatever. I mean, those incarnations of Link where he is a completely silent and uncharacterized avatar for the player is kind of closer to what we get with this Link, which is a shame because we're far enough into the Zelda series at this point to where they know you don't have to do that. Like, even though Link doesn't talk and he's a silent protagonist, there are ways around that you can build goodwill towards that version of the character. And that wasn't something that took place. Do you agree, Mike? Are you on the same page with us here?
Yes, I do agree. I think riding on the coattails of Wind Waker Link, you're kind of high on him at the beginning, but doesn't do anything else to build on him almost the entire game, which was frustrating because I actually like Wind Waker Link, like you talked about. His whole arc with Tetra and his going out to save his sister. Like, he's a very kind of relatable Link. I feel like any one of us, whether we had a sister or no, is like, yeah, we're gonna go save our sister. Duh. And sure, we got to take out the big bad and, rescue the whole planet at the same time. Heck yeah, let's do it. But then this Link's kind of like, you know what? I guess I'm in Pocket Universe. I'll just kind of coast for the entire game.
Yeah. Maybe Link knew what we didn't the whole time, and that this wasn't real, and he was just kind of like going through the motions. Maybe he did.
Yeah. And then, of course, Matt, you already brought up Tetra, but I do think it's hugely disappointing that it isn't even worth having a discussion about this game's version of Zelda. There's
nothing to talk about
in our recap of the plot. Yeah. I mean, like a really, really cool character. We've mentioned this so many times on the season up until now, but a really cool character that was completely sidelined and had nothing to do. And just a complete waste of setup from the Wind Waker.
And look, someone pointed out on our Discord a couple of weeks ago that Tetra sidelined. Tetra, the Zelda character, has been sidelined the whole game. Oh, that's never happened before. Correct. Look, Zelda throughout most of this series has been a sidelined MacGuffin who did nothing until the very end when she sometimes does sealing magic. Sometimes. But it hurts more and hits harder with Tetra specifically because Tetra was such a big part of the Wind Waker. She had so much personality. She had so much guff. She was almost a main character, like a secondary main character, I would say, maybe tertiary behind Link and King of Red Lions. And then she gets the Legend of Zelda, Adventure of Link, Link to the Past, Zelda character treatment. Like, that just makes it worse, in my opinion. Like, sure, there's lots of precedent. Zelda has been historically underused in the franchise, but not as a recurring character from a direct sequel to a game where she was a big part of that game. So I think that's why it hits harder this time.
Yeah. Let's talk about this game's big bad, which is Bellum. Mike, I'm going to send it to you first. How do you feel about Bellum as a big bad in a Zelda game?
I don't hate Bellum. I don't feel like Bellum was very special. I would have liked to have seen maybe some more actual Bellum throughout the game. Like, give me maybe one or two Bellum run-ins as we're going. Like, you have the creatures that are defending some of the islands, right? Which we're supposed to believe are Bellum infected or aspects of Bellum.
Or minions of.
Yeah. But I mean, give me at least something to connect me with Bellum.
Give me a Phantom Bellum.
Something through the game to kind of get me up to date on his character. Give me a motivation. That's my big thing is, why does Bellum want to have what the Ocean King has? Like, what's Bellum getting out of this? Like, Bellum just kind of seems like maybe a parasite that was like a cool worm that found its way into like the Ocean King's ear and then kind of did some stuff, and now he's the big bad.
He's the earworm from Alpha SETI 5?
I mean, yeah.
That'd be SETI Alpha 5.
Thank you. Sorry.
I wasn't going to correct you because I didn't know.
You didn't know, yeah.
But
this is SETI Alpha 5!
There you go. There's our Star Wars reference for the week.
Whoa! Leave that in.
What did I just do? What did I just do?
You better leave that in.
Star Trek. I can't believe I did that.
What have I done?
I'm reporting you to the greatest generation.
He needs a bat lift to the face.
He does need a bat lift to the face.
I couldn't flub that harder if I tried. I'm ashamed.
By all the captains, I renounce you.
I deserve that.
But damn, I'm still reeling from that.
Seriously, me too, a little bit.
If you guys don't know, that's big. That's the biggest thing in this whole game is what he just did with his face. Gosh.
That was incredible. Thank you for that, Lyndon.
Man, part of me wants you to take that out just to save yourself, but then also you have to leave it in.
No, I mean, I believe in the truth, and it's important that I leave it in because of that. Without accountability, you know.
You drug me through the mud more than once on the edit.
Nope, it's staying in. I vow to leave it in. I'm ashamed. It's going to take me some time to get over this. But look, I completely agree. I think the thing is, Bellum needed agency and needed personality. We needed the impression that Bellum was a character that had an agenda. Mm-hmm. And we're told that Bellum has an agenda, but
we're never told what the agenda is.
Well, I mean, it's kind of implied to be just, it's evil influence will consume the Great Sea, right? And that's fine in and of itself, but we've got to have moments. We've got to have moments where Bellum is active in that. Right. And we never really had that. And I think that really holds Bellum back from being as interesting of a character as it could have been. And this goes back to, again, the whole, what if this had just been the Great Sea and not a pocket universe? Well, then you can have, even if Bellum is not a sentient character with like a personality, you can still have it communicated that like, hey, if you don't defeat Bellum, then its evil influence will consume the entire Great Sea.
Yep.
And now all of the people that you left behind
are in danger. Bellum's what's the word I'm looking for?
He's trying to escape. His influence is going to leave the pocket universe and infect your universe.
Bellum's elemental evil will consume the world if you don't stop him. Like, sure, he doesn't need to have agency at that point. It's just, if you don't stop him, everything is going to be like this.
Well, it's like the floods scary in Halo. Like, they don't have much. Besides the grave mine, they don't have a lot of thought process or
it's just they'll consume everything and everything everywhere will die.
So that would have been a great
we should probably stop
tie-in.
that.
Like, hey, if you don't save this pocket universe from Bellum, he's going to infect everything and everything you love will die. I like that.
Yeah.
Do you want to hear about my Zelda dream?
I always want to hear about a Zelda dream.
I have a lot of dreams. So I had a dream before I ever got to Bellum about what Bellum was, and it's pretty funny. So I had a vivid dream because I actually fell asleep playing this game.
Nice.
And yes, as one does in bed with the Switch. I've also fell asleep
DS.
Same goddamn thing. I've fallen asleep playing the pod racing game before, and that did not go well for me. So I had a dream, and in this dream, I'm coming up on the ghost ship. And this is like another ghost ship encounter we haven't had yet. But all of a sudden, as I'm looking at the ghost ship, the lights on the back of the ship rearrange and form a face. Mm-hmm. And the whole ghost ship starts to like transform like a mech.
Cool.
And the ghost ship turned into a character. And in my dream, I kid you not, like it had like a health bar appear at the top that said Bellum. And it was like 3 health bars long. Ooh. He was the ghost ship. Yeah. And he was like a sentient ghost that was like a bad spirit of the Ocean King. Yeah. But he was the ship. Yeah. And I was like, man, that's awesome. And I woke up and it wasn't that cool.
No,
I was going to say, what you just described is way cooler than anything that actually happened. So
congratulations to your subconscious.
You should go make Zelda games.
Someday.
Someday. Look, I feel like we've had collectively enough good ideas of how to improve Zelda games that maybe at some point we should just kind of float some of those out there.
You would have to learn Japanese in order to actually have an in over there.
See, I don't want to do that.
There you go. Okay. So, Bellum, I think, interesting-ish, but again, like we've been saying with several other things, it ends up being less interesting than a sum of its parts, right? It just doesn't come together into a really compelling concept, which is frustrating. Do we have any other main characters that we need to talk about before we move on to just having some call outs about basically like Z targeting on steroids?
We should probably talk about Oshus.
I was gonna say Oshus for sure.
So I think Oshus was probably one of the more well-written and compelling characters through the whole thing. Like, it was very obvious from the beginning that he was the Ocean King. Like, I think, Lyndon, you called that in the first episode. Like, it was telegraphed pretty heavily, but I do think that his benevolent sea spirit is kind of a cool concept. And when you learn more about him as you travel around, especially in the Cobble Kingdom, where the all of the ghosts contribute like their society's great success and prosperity to the Ocean King's benevolence, and like, oh, this area of the sea used to be basically like a paradise because the Ocean King was such a great god, more or less. Like, yeah, he's worth saving. Please help him in any way you can. Like, throughout the whole game, it felt, from every character you interacted with, from the fortune teller on whatever that first island was to most of the other characters throughout the game, were all like, yeah, we missed the Ocean King. Like, I don't know what happened to him, but when he was around, things were way better. If you're helping him, how can I help you? Like, once characters knew you were helping the Ocean King, they were like on board with you. So I do think he was pretty well written and pretty well characterized. I think Oshus was a neat character. His powers were kind of cool, where he could like do astral projection into places to like talk to you, and like that feels very benevolent ocean god. Like, yeah, I can get on board with that. Teleporting you when he gets some of his power back, very cool. And then turning into the giant whale at the end was like, yeah, that totally tracks for what a benevolent ocean god would be, as a giant whale who's just like floating around. It felt very Levios from Skyward Sword. Like, that's really who I compare him mostly to, is like, cool character, on board with it. Yeah, I like it. I'm there.
So I was there for Oshus pretty much the entire time. I really liked his characterization. The biggest thing for me was, so comparing this game to its big brother, which for me is Wind Waker.
Sure.
He felt like the most Wind Waker-y character of the whole thing to me.
Totally agree with that.
He felt like he was straight up out of that level of game and would not have been out of place there. And that's why I'm a little upset that it was Pocket Universe and not like he is the ruler of this area of the ocean you're exploring, and that by saving him, you didn't create a giant ally for your quest.
It's what I thought the whole game was about. Yes.
So, yes, I get that frustration, but I thought he was very well written. There were very few missteps, I feel like, with Oshus. I loved his transition from like the benevolent grandfather of the island that everyone just calls grandpa because he's like the one old guy, to being the ocean god. And he just kind of really, I think the way they played him was probably one of the better characters of the whole game.
I think he was the best written character. At the end of the day, he got across the finish line the right way.
I still think I would put Linebeck as a character above Oshus, but I see what both of you were saying, and I do agree with most of it. I agree with you both that this is a very Wind Waker feeling character, and there's an outline of something really cool happening here. I still am a little fuzzy on the mechanics of this whole thing, where it's like Oshus is just an aspect of the Ocean King. And that like split off after the curse and all this other, like, that's fine. I don't need firm answers to these things. I'm cool with like a certain amount of smushy fantasy word salad, right? Like, it's fine. Yeah. Zelda gives us that all the time, and it's not a bad thing in and of itself. And yeah, I think Oshus is definitely is fine. No major disappointments for me on that front. Let's go ahead and move on to what I'm calling in my head Z-targeting on steroids, where we go around the table and we call out a few moments of character excellence throughout the game, mostly in terms of side characters. I'm going to go first and say that I really like the concept of what I'm calling the cosplay sisters, which is Jolene and her mermaid sister, who you find out like, so Jolene says she's a pirate queen. Her sister says she's a mermaid. You find out that neither of them are actually those things. They just like playing dress up. And I think that that's actually really funny and that's like a very, very Zelda approach to a quirky character design, right? And so that was fun. There were some big, warm blanket Zelda feelings for me in Jolene and her sister. And I also just think that they both had moments to shine, right? Like Jolene throughout the entire game, coming for Linebeck's blood, but then you kind of slowly start figuring out that it's all just a put-on act.
It's a jilted lover.
Yeah. Right. And then with her sister, you get that whole fun side quest where Jolene's sister like falls into a sugar daddy relationship with the old wayfarer, right? I mean, those are fun, funny moments, and I thought that there was some success there. How about you, Mike?
So yeah, I definitely liked the sisters. They were memorable and funny. They were classic Zelda characters. I'm still going to go in the Oshus camp for that. I thought he was a really good Zelda character as a whole, from being like the good benevolent. I'm here nor there kind of on Linebeck right now. Other side character that I think is a great Zelda side character is Gongaron.
Yeah, I liked him.
And so he did a good job of doing that. He's the standoffish, like, I don't like Link, but then through Link's actions, he ends up being Link's boy.
Yeah.
BOI.
Yep.
And kind of goes on. And then you go find him at the mini game and
he's like, I'll be your avatar for this mini game. Yeah.
Hey, yeah, Gongaron, you're my boy. So, but that's the thing is like most Zelda games, I can pick out more characters that I'm more invested in. If that sounds weird. I did not play Zelda 2, so I don't know if there's many investable side characters in that game.
No, none. No.
So, but I mean, that's my frame of reference. But for all the Zelda games I have played, I mean, maybe minus Zelda 1, then I'm thinking that this is probably my least favorite group of side characters.
Yeah. I think you guys picked out pretty much the cream of the crop. I had one. Oh, I really also liked Zhao's, the blacksmith. I thought he was really cool. I like my original frame of reference for him was possibly a Gerudo or Gerudo offshoot, and then finding out that actually he's a descendant of the Cobble Kingdom made me like really like that character more because it put him in a really cool place for this world and Zelda in general. I thought that was a neat thing, like this ancient mystical blacksmith who has knowledge of an ancient kingdom that's passed into legend. And I thought he was a really cool character. I like you, Mike. I really liked Gongaron, mostly because I actually really enjoyed being able to play as Gongaron in the Goron dungeon. I thought that was a very well executed multi-character dungeon. You don't get a lot of well-executed multi-character dungeons in Zelda, in my opinion. I think this one was a good one.
Moving off of, so I think Zhao's is a great pick, Matt. Moving off of that, I do want to give a recognition to the Cobble Kingdom in general.
Yeah, really cool side characters overall. Liked them a lot.
Yeah, you just kind of those implications of like a long lost civilization that you do have the departed spirits of several characters to like tie to.
Yeah.
You know,
it felt really cool.
Yeah, I thought that was all pretty fun stuff, and it's one of those things where it was different. And it was unique, and it was something that was endemic to one specific Zelda game, right? And existed purely within that one Zelda game, and was neat and caused you to have questions about the history of this civilization and these deceased characters and all of this stuff. And I do think that that's a thing that Zelda tends to do pretty well. And the Cobble Kingdom is like another example of that. Mm-hmm. So I look back on that whole section of the game pretty favorably.
Yeah. And I think my last one is going to go to the fake hero who's driving around on the fake King of Red Lions, which makes even less sense now that we know that this takes place in a pocket universe.
Oh my God, you're right. It makes no sense whatsoever.
At all. It literally could not be further from. It's so nonsensical. Like, I just don't know what to think of it anymore.
Do you want to hear my headcanon for this, though?
I do actually want to hear your headcanon.
The King of Red Lions had, eons maybe.
We'll give him an eon. One eon.
An eon to kind of do his own thing and be a ship on the ocean, right?
Sure.
Does it not make sense that he explored pretty much the far reaches of this land, this ocean by himself?
Sure.
So then could he have not come upon the ghost ship and also entered this pocket universe at some point?
But then how would he have gotten back out?
He's essentially a deity.
And also, like, sure, I'm on board with this headcanon. Still doesn't explain how the fake hero would know about Link, seeing as Wind Waker happened immediately precedent to.
But so here's my thing. I think that the King of Red Lions, during his eon of travel, came upon this land, maybe did something really cool in this land, which would have been like a cool, maybe like a couple lines from the hero saying like, oh yes, there was a ship that came and taught us the ways of this or something. Mm-hmm. And maybe sought him out as maybe the hero, but found out he wasn't the hero, then GTFO'd, so he created his own.
So he's the cast off, like, oh, you're not good enough for me.
Right. Well, because we have no concept of what the time is in this land. The Cobble Kingdom could have been, 20 minutes ago to Link instead of 10 minutes ago to Link.
Sure.
So maybe the King of Red Lions was here during the Cobble Kingdom or whatnot. I just kind of filled my own gaps with that, and I tend to do that with games where there's, plot gaps or whatnot. I just kind of fill it with whatever sounds cool in my head. So that's what I thought, is maybe the King of Red Lions had visited and he constructed this homage to the King of Red Lions.
Sure, I'll take that as headcanon. Why not? We'll go for it.
In the absence of any better explanation, yeah, that'll do. Do we have anything else we want to say about the plot before we start moving on to other categories?
You mean Z-targeting?
No, we're still in the plot section here.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
fine.
This is an extension of the plot.
Oh, got it. I don't know. Anuki are cool enough, I guess. Genocidal maniacs. There you go. We covered that pretty extensively in that episode, so I'll just leave it at genocidal maniacs.
All right, y'all, I think that brings us to the end of our discussion about the plot. Let's get into part 2 of the Sacred Realms recap, which is our discussion about the best dungeon. And, I think that this is the portion of the Sacred Realms recap that is going to bring us to some much more positive discussion than we've had so far, which is good because it's been a little bit of a downer up until this point. But anyone who's been listening to the season up until now probably could have seen this coming. But yeah, let's talk about best dungeons in a game where I think we had some pretty good ones to choose from. Mike, I'm going to send it to you first. Which dungeon did you think was the best executed here?
I appreciate you sending it to me. Can I actually go last on this?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, go for it. Matt, how about you?
Yeah, sure. Best dungeon, definitely the Ice Temple. I think we had nothing but good things to say about the Ice Temple. We had to throw in, or I had to, as is my job, had to throw in a couple downers about the dungeon, but they were very superfluous, very trying to find something to nitpick. And overall, I look back at that dungeon, and if I could replay any section of this game, I would 100% go replay the Ice Temple, the Temple of Muto, and some of the mini games that were in between those two. I think is mini games a section later?
No.
I thought Bloopy Trails was a.
Oh yeah, you're right. We do have Bloopy
Trails. So I'll say my Bloopy Trails later. But no, this dungeon and the Temple of Muto really were both really great. But I think Ice Temple takes the cake overall for not only having a wonderful item, which I know is another thing that we have to talk about, but also just a really well-designed dungeon with great puzzles that utilize that item very well. Fun boss fight, unique boss fight.
Yeah, Gleeok was fun.
And the boss fights in general were all at least good.
Sure. Yep.
Some of them were great. And I think Gleeok was in the realm of great. So yeah, Ice Temple for me, hands down.
Yeah. I think so. I mean, obviously Ice Temple is the one that I had teed up because I do think it's the obvious answer for a lot of reasons that you just mentioned, Matt. Just to say something different than you, I guess I'll go with Muto's Temple, which honestly I didn't enjoy quite as much as the Ice Temple, but I thought was still a lot of fun and also benefited from some really pretty excellent lead up. Right?
Yeah.
It benefited from having an overworld dungeon for the most part, which wasn't super complicated mechanically, but just there was a lot of table setting for that dungeon, which can go a long way.
It felt Skyward Sword in that way, or even Tears of the Kingdom, Windship Arc.
Oh yeah, it was Stormwind Arc. Yeah.
Look, so many names. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that the Cobble Kingdom, that whole section was really one of the primary predecessors to what we ended up getting in Skyward Sword, which was the dungeon-esque overworld lead up, right? And I really enjoy that, not only about Skyward Sword, but about that section of the game as well. Both, I think, are really well executed.
Yeah, and I think Muto's Temple has got the biggest response to my main criticism of dungeons in this game, which is that overall, and Max felt much more strongly about this in our discussion last week than I necessarily do, but I am aligned with him to a certain degree. The dungeons in this game, I feel, don't do a great job at portraying a sense of place in the way that a lot of Zelda dungeons do. And I think that at times was something I was disappointed in, even when the dungeons were of a good length and having good puzzles and good bosses and good items, right? That was just kind of a little nitpick that lingered throughout basically the entire game for me. Muto's Temple was kind of a refute of that, where it had a pyramid structure that was established by the appearance of the temple from the outside, which was great. I really appreciate that consistency in outward presentation carried forward to inward arrangements. So I'll go with Muto's Temple just to do something different. But I mean, between that and Ice Temple, I mean, there's really no bad answers here. And, honestly, I do think that this was a game full of strong dungeons, at least in like a moment-to-moment gameplay sense. Criticisms about sense of place and aesthetic do still apply, but I do think that the dungeons were probably the most fun that I had in this game. And I would say we're good. Like I would put these dungeons just in terms of sheer fun factor above dungeons in several other Zelda games that we've played. Maybe not like top of the list, actually. Definitely
not near top of the list.
No, not top of the list, but like there's some good stuff happening here. So
yeah, and I think like compounding on your sense of place, like the whole feeling of the entirety of the Cobble Kingdom was very well portrayed. It feels like they spent more time on this part of the game, the Cobble Kingdom, than on any other part of the game from a design perspective in general.
It was very similar to the attention to detail that was paid to like the Ikana Castle area in Majora's Mask.
Yeah, that's a great callback.
Very similar thing.
Yeah, I really appreciated it. The aesthetic being uniform across, and it felt like an ancient society should feel, right? Like it felt like grand. It had a sense of grandiose that it was partially forgotten, but was still there and present. And it just really knocked it out of the park with the whole Cobble Kingdom section of the game, for sure.
Well, I should not have gone last because I was going to say Ice Temple, but because that was the episode I was on, I was hesitant to just say Ice Temple because we've already talked about it.
You can say Ice Temple.
I loved the Ice Temple, but like you guys have said in several episodes, I don't think there's necessarily a bad dungeon besides the Temple of the Ocean King in this entire game. I think I thoroughly enjoyed every dungeon. I cannot think of a single one that I'm just like, oh man, I'm really down on this dungeon. I did like the Ice Temple. I thought it had some sense of place as well. Yeah. I enjoyed the sense of place. The item was awesome. The boss was great. My other one was the Muto. So, I mean, going forward, that whole kingdom is awesome. I like the overworld. I way overplanned that dungeon, but I like that the game kind of led me to that. Along with this podcast is, I keep hearing from like Cody and Max how much I need to be like keeping notes. I'm like, well, shit, I better be ready for this. And then you keep a bunch of notes and it's like, you don't really need notes for this guy. Like, oh, okay. I see you, Zelda.
You got jebaited.
But no, I thought that those were really good. But I will say it's a big uptick for this game. The quality of the dungeons. If this game had mediocre dungeons, I think it would be way lower down on my list. And my enjoyability. The only reason I kept up with this game in the short time frame I did, because I actually played this game start to finish in about 3 weeks, because I got the game late. Then I had to catch up for the podcast. And then I was like, well, I don't know what's else going to happen in the next couple of weeks, so I better go ahead and get there. So I finished it out pretty quick, and the dungeons were enough to keep me interested past the point I should have been going to sleep. So
much to the chagrin of your wife?
So much chagrin. Like I'm still honeydewing my way out of that hole. And I had to promise her the next one was not on the same system because she's like, if you start blowing into that gosh dang game one more time.
You don't have to do that.
No, and I'm glad. I appreciate that, Lyndon. Thank you for saving my marriage.
Not until you get to Spirit Tracks.
Well, you know what? We'll cross that bridge
when and if we get there.
Come to it. Yeah.
Well, not if, when.
When. Yeah. But no, I definitely think that the dungeons were a highlight of this game. And I liked the fact that they stacked some really solid ones toward the end because it helped with that progression of, when you get toward the end of a game and you're just like, I want to finish this sucker out. Like you've got to have something keeping you lured in at the very end. Because that's a big faux pas for me on a lot of games and I like adventure games with
just
a lot of
fumbling the ending.
Yeah. Like, you'll go into so much of the game and I'll get to like a certain part in the main story and I'm like, you know what? This isn't fun anymore. I'm going to do side quest.
Yeah.
And then I either never finish the game.
Skyrim.
Yeah. I finished that one multiple times.
Well, yes.
But yeah, you kind of go to a point where you're like, I'm tired of the main quest. Like I just want to go do other things that are fun. The main quest was fun for this game. The dungeons were fun. There are some flubs, but the dungeons were not that.
Yeah. I really think the last 3 dungeons we got, excluding the last Temple of the Ocean King and Bellum. So like the Goron dungeon, the Ice Temple and Muto's Temple. I think those 3 dungeons were really the best 3 dungeons in the game. I think they really did backstack the dungeons in a good way that kind of, because I mean, man, we were really down on this game for the first half, but once we got into Goron Temple, things felt like they picked up a lot, and our whole outlook and our whole tone for the pod, for the game itself, all of it just kind of took a wild swing in the other direction into a big positive. So I do appreciate that. To the discussion of temples overall, I really don't think there was actually a bad one. Like, we didn't love the ghost ship because it was just escort mission, the dungeon. But at the same time, it had the second best sense of place in the entire game. Like, it felt like a haunted ghost ship that was very dangerous. So, there are good things about every one of these dungeons, and I enjoyed the Wind Temple quite a lot. I enjoyed the very first temple we did. I thought it was a really good intro fire dungeon temple. I thought, I thought the Temple of Courage was good. Like, I think it really did have minimum good dungeons through the whole thing. So definitely the high point of the game, in my opinion.
Cool. Yeah. No disagreement, on any major point for me. I feel like our next section is pretty intrinsically linked to what we're talking about right now.
Items.
And so let's just go ahead and get into that. That's going to be part 3, in which we discuss best item in this game. And this one, I think, it's going to be such a fun discussion because I don't think any of us had anything bad to say about any item that we get throughout the entirety of this game.
No. I think there are 4 items that really stand out to me. And that is the boomerang, the hook, or what is it? What's it called?
The grapple.
The grapple, thank you. The grappling hook, the hammer, and the bomb shoes. I think all 4 of those items are the best iteration of that item that has ever existed in a Zelda game. And it's wild to say that, but
I agree.
It's totally true. Like, the hammer has real utility, and it's fun because you're using your fairies to just murder people. Like, awesome. So cool. The grappling hook has so many unique uses, and it has like a myriad of applications that you can use it for. The bomb shoes, being able to actually control where they go instead of just setting them on the ground and hoping to God they go the right direction. And then the boomerang, just like drawing your path infinitely around in your visible area. All of those items were just so cool, and only could have been this cool on the touchpad from the 3DS. Like, there's no other way that these items could have been this good, but they were implemented supremely. Like, I think I said just a bit ago that it felt like most of the development of this game was spent on the Cobble Kingdom, and I think I'm gonna have to backtrack that and say most of this game was designed around the items and making those items cool. It feels like most of the game was spent on how do we make these items cool, unique, and useful.
Yeah. It's really interesting because I think that one of the things that this game had to do was to justify the stylus controls as being a thing that was worthwhile, right? It had to prove that swing, that gimmick was something that was a good choice to make in a Zelda game. And it's really tough because on the one hand, I think we can say that from just general combat and movement, it was not.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think in every meaningful way, just using D-pad or control stick and buttons to do those things is a better and smoother experience, bar none. But then you have the items, which are, in fairness, a major part of any Zelda game. And I think that the way that the stylus controls fed into the control of these items is actually a very compelling case for why it was a good idea in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you can't call it a complete win because you still have that other half of things that is just still not great and kind of creaky, right? But these items are just so fun. And honestly, they do a lot to bring me to a place where I'm able to admire the swing of going all in on the stylus controls. Even if I can't like wholeheartedly support it, it's getting me to a place where I'm just kind of like, okay, I see what the potential was. I see why somebody thought that this might be a good thing to do based on the execution here. In terms of my overall favorite item, the grapple is definitely the one that comes the most immediately to mind just because of how many freaking things it does and how cool all of them are. I will say that it loses just a few points simply because you never do any of those things with the grapple again after leaving the Ice Palace.
That's a super good point.
Like deflecting projectiles, using it as a catapult, whatever, it gets no play after the Ice Temple. And which is a shame because it's one of those things where even though we only had one other dungeon and then a Temple of the Ocean King after the Ice Temple, use that. Like, come up with some puzzles that utilize that. Like, Zelda games for a long time have done a pretty good job of like, okay, you got this item in an earlier dungeon. This late game dungeon has got a puzzle that kind of corresponds to that item, right?
So I want to disagree with you on that point specifically because this is, if you played in the order we did, this is your second to last dungeon. And can you think of very many items that you get in your second to last dungeon that you then use in the final dungeon and the boss dungeon? Because not too many come to mind to me.
Well, I mean, in Ocarina of Time, you do have to use the hover boots in both the Spirit Temple and Ganon's Tower.
Sure. I said not too many, not none. So I'm waiting for two more minimum.
Let's see. So Skyward Sword, you got the what was the item in the second last dungeon? Fire Temple. Skyward Sword.
Was that the bow?
No, that was the sand ship.
Oh, you're right.
Dang, Matt, I thought you liked this game.
I do. Look, I don't have I have a fairly encyclopedic memory.
While he's looking and doing that, I'm going to say that I agree with Matt that the bomb chew, boomerang, grappling hook, those are really the top ones for me in this game. The hammer was good.
I also agree with that.
And I think that those, along with the stylus control, were all really well pulled off. I still think that the grappling hook was the coolest rendition of the grappling hook we've seen, or a hook shot at this point. That really even sold it for me, even with the lack of carryover toward the end of the game. You do use it for some exploration. Like, I went back, because I'll throw this in here now. I decided to go back and try and get that dang last fire piece to get the second upgrade for Leaf. And man, I had to go back and explore every island. I should not have done that because it made me kind of upset. But there was something to do with the grappling hook on almost every island if you backtrack. Does that mean it's fun? Maybe not, but it was useful.
It was the magma mitts.
Okay, so no.
Yeah, nope.
Yeah.
I mean, you do use them in the Triforce Temple.
Yeah, no, sure. But it's a good point. Late game dungeon items have this problem traditionally in Zelda games. So, you're right. You are right. But my point that I was trying to get at was after you get the bomb
still
chews,
stands. Yes.
Yeah, after you get the bomb chews, you do use them throughout most of the rest of the game. And they do have some play in the Temple of the Ocean King as well. So, I do think that just on paper, just in terms of pure what it does and how fun it is to use, it's the grapple, right?
Sure.
The bomb chews are a close runner-up to me just because this might be the biggest item glow-up that we've ever had in a Zelda game, right?
Yeah.
Bomb chews...
You think bomb chews is a bigger item glow-up than the hammer, which is a remarkably useless item in every other game?
Yeah, I do. I think the hammer is number 3, and the hammer is a lot of fun. I found myself using the hammer a ton after I got it for the entire rest of the game because it's great. But the bomb chews are just so fun, and you do need to use them in several instances after the temple that you get them in.
Yeah.
It's one of those two. I'm gonna say that the grapple hook kind of edges out the bomb chews for me, but the bomb chews are just so close. I just think that the execution on those, especially versus my preconceived notions of what bomb chews are like to use, was huge.
Yeah.
So
Lyndon's going bomb chews. Mike, did you go Hook or Bombchu?
I did the hook, bro.
You did Hook? Okay. Man, I'm really stuck between those two and the boomerang. Like, as fun as the hammer is, like, it's still a hammer and you still only use it to hit switches and occasionally hit enemies. Sure. But like, the boomerang had such unique utility with the drawing and I think it was really well implemented, and it was such an early game item. You use it the rest of the game in every temple, and every time you go into the Temple of the Ocean King, and virtually every area that you're in, you end up using the boomerang at some point. So I think overall utility probably has to go to the boomerang, but at overall fun factor, I think I'm gonna have to go grapple hook. I think that grapple hook just is so unique and is so different from any other Zelda item that has such utility and versatility that I think it really showcases everything that is great, and the few things, in my opinion, that are great about the stylus controls.
Yeah. And I think what we really need to call out here is just how impressive it is that there are no throwaway items in this game. I mean, when you look at the roster of things here, they're all things that we've had in Zelda games before, right? They're all mainstays for the most part. Boomerangs, bow and arrow, hammer, grapple hook, Bombchus, whatever. We've had them all before, but they all kind of tend to take turns throughout the Zelda series of like, in this game, the boomerang is awesome, but in this game, the boomerang kind of sucks, right?
Like, or you use it for 1/4 of the game.
Right, yeah. Like in this game, the hook shot is awesome, but in these other games, the hook shot is just not quite as fun, right? That was not a thing that was happening in this game. Like, I think that each main item and the way that it was implemented was a winner. And I think that might actually be unique in the Zelda series.
Yeah, I actually totally agree.
I think that is one area where Phantom Hourglass just does stand head and shoulders above every other entry in the Zelda series.
You know, the only other Zelda game that has a suite of items or abilities where none of them are throwaways, and I'm going to hate myself for saying this, is kind of Zelda 2, Adventure of Link. Like, each of those spells that you get, you mainly utilize shield, healing, jump, but fairy is super useful. And like a lot of the other ones that you get, lightning, like the suite of spells you get in Adventure of Link is fairly useful throughout the entire game, which is really cool. And we've done a lot of comparison between these two games. Not that they're similar games, because they're not. They're very dissimilar. Having played today through a decent chunk of Adventure of Link, they are nothing alike. I think we've been comparing them so much because that's kind of the discussion we're going to have when we get to ranking is this better than Adventure of Link? Because we know it's not better than Legend of Zelda or anything else. But is it better than Adventure of Link? Which is why I've been making that comparison. And so when we're talking about the two super high points of this game, the dungeons and the items, like thinking back to Adventure of Link, we liked, or at least enjoyed, most of those dungeons well enough for what they were, SNES dungeons. Yeah. And the suite of abilities in that game instead of items, I think we also generally enjoyed. Sure, we didn't use them nearly as much. We mostly just stuck to the ones I mentioned: Thunderbolt, healing, and shield, and jump. Like those were kind of our main four, right? But the other ones had use. So it's interesting that as dissimilar as these two games are, the high points of these two games are more or less the same. Which is interesting, in my opinion.
Okay. Mike, do you have anything else you want to say about items before we move out of this section?
No. Items good.
Items good.
Items good. The table agrees. Resolution passed. We have consensus. Let's move on to part 4, which is probably, man, talk about a come down from like what was a very fun category to what is going to be pretty much terrible one. Part 4 is best music.
There is none.
Yeah, like what do you even say in this section?
This is an area where Zelda 2 has it hands down, which is insane.
Oh yeah.
I really liked all the bangers from other games that they brought to this game.
The only musical theme in this game that is standing out that is going to live in my memory is going to be Linebeck's theme. I feel like that's probably true for most everybody. Linebeck's theme is great. The version of it that plays while you're fighting haunted, possessed Linebeck at the end of the game is great. It's really cool. It's awesome. It deserves to be in the conversation with like some of the better Zelda theme character themes, right? Aside from that, every single piece of music that we get in this game is a reuse from Wind Waker or Ocarina of Time or something else. And in some ways, to me, like, you know, I can excuse elements of the stylus controls not landing, right?
Sure.
It was a swing. They were trying something. It was worthwhile to do, I think. I can excuse I can excuse some elements that were constrained by like the DS as a less powerful system, right? Sense of scale on the Great Sea, for instance. You know, what I cannot excuse is this game completely whiffing the music, which is one of those things that Zelda as a series has been getting right without exception from its inception. From The Legend of Zelda all the way up to Twilight Princess before this game, and then to Skyward Sword and even Spirit Tracks and everything after this game,
has amazing soundtracks.
Banger soundtracks. Great, like worthy of inclusion in the Symphony of the Goddesses, right?
Which all of those games have something in the Symphony of the Goddesses.
Yes, great stuff.
This game notably does not.
This game has got nothing. Just nothing. And yeah, that's just a huge bummer.
Yeah, I don't want to dogpile on that anymore because I think you really covered it. It's just disappointing I think it's disappointing to a measure more than any other part of the disappointment of this game.
Mike, do you think that I'm completely wrong, or are you with us on this?
I'm with you, brother. I'm with you. I really was hoping for some more music as we went through this game, especially with some of these really unique environments with the Ice Temple, with Egyptian Pyramid Planet. I was really hoping that we would get some more unique music. That would have been a great time to throw in like a really unique theme. And I'm not sure that they capitalized on that opportunity.
Cool. Nothing really else to say there. Let's move on to part 5, which is Best Bloopy Trail, where we talk about some of the interesting things that diverted our attention throughout this entire game. Matt would like to go first.
I have my top 2. And I'm going to, while I'm talking, narrow it down to my top 1. My 2 favorite minigames were the Maze Island, where you have different tiers of going through the same maze to hit statues with your sword, that really pushed, especially if you have all the items, which I went back and did this after I completed the final temple. It really pushed your ingenuity and creativity and planning. It pushed your planning as well to hit the route the right way to complete the maze. And I think mazes are super fun, number 1. It's part of the reason why the labyrinths and Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild are so much fun to me. So not only was it just fun by itself, but it also utilized the full suite of items, which, as we've talked about, is probably the best or second best part of this game. The second one that I liked the most was the ship combat minigame, where you're floating around and you're shooting all the targets. And I don't know why I liked that one, because it was really just tap on the targets as fast as you could, but it felt really fun to me for some reason. Like it hit the nautical ship combat bug that I was missing for most of this game, and I enjoyed it quite a lot. So I think those 2 minigames to me were the ones that stuck out the most. I think I have to give best minigame to Maze Island, just because it does utilize the suite of items very well, and also I think is the best iteration of the planning map aspect, 10 billion times better than the Temple of the Ocean King by far. Like it did what the Temple of the Ocean King should have done and did it better. So I think Maze Island gets it for me.
How about you, Mike?
So I also really enjoyed the Maze Island. I ended up doing the second tier of it. I never got the top tier of it.
I never could beat it. I tried so many times. I spent like literally probably 2,000, like not 2,000. I think I spent 500 plus rupees on it.
I got nuts close one time. I was like 6 seconds away and I didn't get it. And by that point, I was like, I'm just ready to go finish this game.
That's where I was too.
But it was fun. I enjoyed the planning aspect of the Maze Island. But I will give my favorite minigame to the Gongaron minigame on the DS Island. So I really enjoyed that. And it did take me several tries to get some really good scores, because you kind of have to plan that as well. Like the first time you go through that, there's no way you're going to get the top score first time. You kind of plan, hey, where are all these different spots at I've got to hit? How do I get here in maximum time? And then you've got a little bit of steering correction you've got to do. That takes some skill to build, but I enjoyed that. And you're playing with your best boy, Gongaron. So I really enjoyed that mini game. As far as the side questy goodness, there was not as much in a world like this as that I would have liked.
So this is something I wanted to touch on. We're focusing very much on mini games right now, because that's really all that you have to focus on. There's one or two things aside from that are character-based side quests. Sugar Daddy, Old Wayfarer, Mermaid comes to mind, and then also the trading quest for whatever that's worth, right? But for the most part, mini games are the main things that you're doing to distract yourself while you're playing this game. And I do think that is kind of a failing of Phantom Hourglass. Again, for a game that at the end of the day tries to make itself somewhat similar to Link's Awakening, drops the ball in a pretty spectacular way, because Link's Awakening has one of the all-time great and fun trading quests, and Phantom Hourglass kind of saves its trading quest for the very end of the game, with very little fanfare and without much to speak of in terms of like useful reward. So I do think that is disappointing, because I think it all goes back to what we were talking about earlier, which is that the cast of characters in this game is just not up to par, really. And in games where that is the case, or in games where that's not the case, in Zelda games where you have an interesting cast of side characters, you tend to have an interesting roster of side quests that complement those characters, right? And that's just not something that really happens here. Now, if we're just talking about mini games, there's some really fun ones here. The DS Island, I agree, is a really good time. Maze Island is a really good time. I really like this game, Shooting Gallery. The Shooting Gallery is something that at times in Zelda games can just be kind of like a little brain dead, right? Like not uber challenging, right? This one is definitely some skill required. And I appreciated that about it. But I think that the overall conversation that we're having is that bloopy trails at large in this game kind of just come down to the mini games, and also, I guess, spirit gem collecting, which we've already discussed as being a thing that is probably not really worth our time on the whole. But if we're just talking about mini games, DS Island probably gets it for me. I thought it was a lot of fun. I think the conversation around side quests and bloopy trails in this game is yet another example of what is kind of a miss for the Zelda series.
Yeah, I agree. And I appreciate you calling out the Shooting Gallery. I only did it maybe 2 or 3 times, and I ended up walking away from it mostly wishing that it was the Majora's Mask Shooting Gallery or the Ocarina of Time Octorok Shooting Gallery. No, the Octorok was Majora's Mask. I think the Ocarina of Time was Rupees. I think those 2 Shooting Gallery mini games were the best in the Zelda series for some reason. Yeah. I didn't love Skyward Sword's pumpkin throwing. It was neat, but I didn't love it, mostly because I played it more on motion controls than I did on the Switch version, which was really not a good thing for a Shooting Gallery game. But I do think the Shooting Gallery was good enough. But to your point about side quests in general, Lyndon, I really do feel like it was just not much here outside of the mini games.
All right, y'all. So here is where we get to the discussion that you've all been waiting for. This is part 6, which is our final thoughts and ranking where we rank Phantom Hourglass against the other games that we played in the series, and then we defend our choice. We walk you through our thought process and let you know how we arrived at the decision that we did. Obviously, it has been a recurring point of discussion throughout this entire season that this game was directly up against Zelda 2 in terms of which one do we like better. And I will say that I think our esteemed third co-host of the night, Mike, maybe is, I could be misreading some of your thoughts and feelings here, but it seems like you might be coming at this game from a place of maybe feeling like it could rise just a little bit up in the ranking past where Matt and I have been talking about it, but we'll leave that for you to break down at, a later point in the discussion. For now, Matt and I have got a little bit of business to take care of. As we said at the top of the episode, Mike has not played Zelda 2, which means that Matt and I have got to cast our votes on whether or not Phantom Hourglass beats that game. And then in the event of a deadlock, we're going to roll out Max's vote, which he gave us last week. And I will, of course, play the audio from that, regardless of whether or not Matt and I get into a deadlock. We'll let you know which way Max voted. So here's how we're going to do it. Typically, the way that we've done this is everyone raises their hand at the start of a voting round, and then what we say is, if you feel like this game is better than the next one in the order, lower your hand. And then we do the voting based on that. People have said recently that they prefer we do that in a slightly more audio-friendly way, so they know what's happening real time. So what we're going to do is we're going to go around the table at each point during the voting, and I'm going to say, do you think that this game is better than this game? Say aye or nay.
Sure.
Okay.
Yes or no. Sure, whatever.
Yeah. Okay. And so just to reiterate the current order of the ranking as it stands at the moment. Number 9 on our list is The Adventure of Link. Number 8 is The Legend of Zelda. Number 7 is A Link to the Past. Number 6 is A Link Between Worlds. Number 5 is Link's Awakening. Number 4 is The Wind Waker. Number 3 is Skyward Sword. Number 2 is Ocarina of Time. And number 1 is Breath of the Wild. So, we're going to you first, Matt. Is Phantom Hourglass better than The Adventure of Link? Yay or nay?
Nay.
Well, that just brings it down to me, doesn't it? Do we have a deadlock?
Do we, Lyndon? Lyndon, is Phantom Hourglass better than Adventure of Link? Yay or nay?
Yay.
Oh, dang it.
And it is at this point in the episode that I will now cut in the audio from one Max Nichols, who cast his vote in last week's episode. Let's go to you, Max.
Played a lot of it, and I was like, okay, I'm kind of leaning towards voting Adventure of Link. And then I played the Temple of Muto and the Ice Temple, and I was like, okay, no, I should vote for Phantom Hourglass. And then we got this ending, and I kind of went back to being unsure. The core question for me is, I look at Adventure of Link. Adventure of Link was critically acclaimed for its time. It was an ambitious game. It tried new stuff. It represents kind of an entirely different evolutionary branch that the Zelda series could have gone. It was it sold well. I think I'd have to go double check that one, I guess, but I'm pretty sure it sold well for its time. And just because it is now looked back on as this black sheep doesn't necessarily undo all of that. And I think it's super interesting to talk about, and it does a lot of things that no other Zelda game does. On the other hand, we have Phantom Hourglass. I can say from experience, because I was there, it was not beloved for its time. All of the problems we are seeing with it now were also seen when it came out. And it doesn't really do stuff that's that bold, and it doesn't succeed at showcasing, new heights of game experience that hadn't been done before. This was years into the DS, right? All the gimmicks in this game had already been done in other DS games, pretty much, except for maybe some of the items. But so, that's all knock against it. But at the same time, it also benefits from decades of game development expertise that wasn't there yet, right? Like if someone was to come to me and they'd never played either game and they weren't like this history obsessed NES game player and they asked me which one they should play, I would tell them Phantom Hourglass, right? So that's the decision in front of me is, good for its time, but kind of bad now, or mediocre for its time and still mediocre now. I think I have to give the nod to Phantom Hourglass, because even though it doesn't have those heights, the lows of Adventure of Link are very low. And it's a game I could basically not recommend to anyone except for historical curiosity. Whereas Phantom Hourglass, I could imagine a player that I would recommend it to. So Phantom Hourglass,
okay,
is the one I vote for.
That's so fair enough. And your thought process, like I'm glad to hear you lay it out in those terms, because I think as much as we've been comparing the two games together over the course of the season, the reality is that they are different experiences that were created at a very different times in the history of gaming. And that makes them difficult to compare just from a ranking standpoint, regardless of whatever similarities we might dredge up while analyzing them, critically.
The proxy detective.
And we're back. As you've all just heard, Max, going slightly against the grain of what I thought he was going to decide to do, voted that Phantom Hourglass is indeed better than The Adventure of Link. So
It's all your fault, Max.
yes. So Phantom Hourglass 100% makes it past Adventure of Link, which is still our bottom-ranked game on the list. Let's talk about this for just 1 second.
And I want to be clear, this is the first time I've ever lost a vote on ranking a game. So
Oh, that's fair.
it's a first.
Good point. Matt, talk us through your thought process here.
Yeah. So, okay. Number one, I knew Max voted Phantom Hourglass. So part of me wanted to be the contrarian. But at the end of the day, hold on, I'm going to reposition my mic. So at the end of the day, I went back and I played through the first, call it hour and a half of Adventure of Link. I made it through Parappa Palace and I made it into the next area towards the second dungeon of Adventure of Link. And while I found the combat to be tedious at first, I actually got back into the rhythm of it fairly quickly and was able to make it through Parappa Palace with only losing one life, and then didn't lose another life the rest of the time that I played. And I remember when we first were playing Adventure of Link, that was like one of our big sticking points, was the combat was just so punishing and hard. And having had experience with the game and going back into it, it felt like I was regaining the skills that I had gained towards the end of the playthrough more quickly. So the combat wasn't as punishing, which meant it wasn't such a put off for me. Max talked about, could he recommend Adventure of Link to a person who wanted to play their first Zelda game? And for some reason, this person came to him with, should I play Phantom Hourglass or Adventure of Link? I want to be very clear. If anyone ever came to me and said, I want to play a Zelda game, but it's only these two, I would literally just say, don't play either of those Zelda games. Like, I would not recommend either of these games to anybody. So I feel like I'm going to take that off the table immediately. And like, I understand where Max was coming from and I don't begrudge that at all. But like, if someone said for some reason, if they gave me that hypothetical, I would just say, I don't think Zelda's for you if those are the only two that you're willing to play. So just removing that, what I come down to is like, what was the game trying to accomplish versus what did it actually accomplish? And Adventure of Link set out to be the second cornerstone of the Zelda series, and they tried to be different from Legend of Zelda in a way that meshed with the target audience of the time. And Adventure of Link was highly critically acclaimed. It sold well, and it set forth as in partnership with Legend of Zelda, it set forth the foundation of the Legend of Zelda to become a successful franchise. So I think the Adventure of Link succeeded greatly in what it set out to do. It was a focused game. It knew what it wanted to be. It set out and it did that, and it did it well. I may not like it very much. I may not think it's a great game now, but at the time that it came out, it was great. And a lot of that comes down to just games are so different now. And I think about a lot of the things we talked about that were high points of Phantom Hourglass, the suite of items, which I even mentioned a little bit ago, was the suite of spells. Unique among all Zelda games is Adventure of Link's suite of spells. Dungeons. We generally liked the dungeons in Adventure of Link. They were neat. Sure, the combat was really hard, but they felt very dungeony. They felt very mazy. You were going around and really exploring your way through things. And they had a sense of place as much as you could in an SNES game.
NES.
Sorry, NES game. The music was phenomenal, which there was no music whatsoever that was good in Phantom Hourglass. Characterization was not a thing in the NES era, but we even had characterization in Adventure of Link through the supplementary materials, which was a standard part of the game at that point in time. Like, we knew what the stakes were for Adventure of Link. We knew the characters that were involved. We knew the motivation behind the main bad guy. We knew the motivation of Link. Like, we knew these things. In this game, those felt less tangible than they did in Adventure of Link. Like, I think it all just comes down to Adventure of Link knew what it was, set out to do a thing, and did it well, and didn't fumble along the way outside of just being overly difficult and outside of having an overworld exploration that didn't mesh with us because we don't have any context for that, right?
Yeah.
But it was a mode of exploration, as we found out mostly through our friend Josh, was like very common at the time and is still somewhat common today in JRPGs and other games of that region that still utilize this mode of overworld exploration.
Yeah.
So all of that comes together to be a game that was not only really great for its time, but for game historians today to look back on it and still say it was a super successful game, and for what it was, does it well. Whereas I think Phantom Hourglass is a mediocre game at best that feels very inconsistent throughout its entire run. It's inconsistent in its characterization. It's inconsistent in its storytelling. It's inconsistent in the enjoyment that you get from the main mechanics, just movement, just combat. Inconsistent, not fun for the most part. Like, it has high points. It has good dungeons. It has good items. But the rest of it comes together to be this kind of weird stew that has a bunch of ingredients thrown in there that don't mesh together. It's like you threw mint and sage and lemon and garlic in with some beef. Like, it just doesn't work.
That sounds bad.
Yeah, it just doesn't work. So I think there's just too much about Phantom Hourglass that is immature and mediocre to really come together to make a game that does not work overall.
So here's what I will say. I stand by my point. I am ranking Phantom Hourglass above The Adventure of Link. I will say I respect The Adventure of Link as a game more than I respect Phantom Hourglass. Yeah. I think that Phantom Hourglass feels amateurish. I think that it feels like a sloppy attempt to make a Zelda game. It feels like what a Zelda game would be if it were made by the B team at Nintendo, if such a thing were to exist. And based on what Max has told us, that's basically exactly what it was, and it shows. Here's my deal. I come to the Zelda series for certain specific things. Dungeons with puzzle solving, suite of items, offbeat characters, and flavorful worlds, right? And I think that at the end of the day, Phantom Hourglass has those things more than The Adventure of Link does. I agree that The Adventure of Link executes on its base premise as a game more successfully than Phantom Hourglass does. But The Adventure of Link still does not have most of the enduring qualities that I come to the Zelda series for. In a vacuum, just as a video game, I think that Adventure of Link is a better video game than Phantom Hourglass. But if I'm ranking it on a list of Zelda games, yes, I think Phantom Hourglass edges it out just a little bit. I think that there is a reason that The Adventure of Link is not a type of Zelda game that has been done again since that game.
Sure. And look, I actually agree with every one of your points there. I do. I think at the end of the day, I come down to it in, would I be more likely to replay Adventure of Link or more likely to replay Phantom Hourglass? The answer is no.
Well, just to answer that question,
I actually might continue my playthrough of Adventure of Link.
I would be more likely to just for funsies revisit The Adventure of Link at this point. I would. And a lot of that is just because, one, it's on the Switch. It's baked in emulation on the Switch with rewinds.
Yeah.
Right. But that's another element too. Were you rewinding while you were playing?
I did a little bit, not a lot.
Okay. But even then, right? Imagine the conversation when you're playing The Adventure of Link, and that is an option that's completely
sure. But we had that conversation in that season.
Sure. Okay.
So look, that rewind aside, I agree that the dungeons in Phantom Hourglass are superior to the dungeons in Adventure of Link from a modern Zelda perspective. I agree that the storytelling is superior in Phantom Hourglass from a modern Zelda storytelling. But what I don't think those things are good enough to elevate it above what is a critically acclaimed, well-received for its time, historic cornerstone of the Legend of Zelda series. And normally I don't vote that way. Normally I vote with which did I enjoy more? But I didn't enjoy either of these games very much. And enough to have that be a deciding factor. Mm-hmm. So I have to then fall back on when I'm just sitting there saying I really didn't like either of these games enough to spend an excessive amount of time with them outside of what we need to do for the pod. With that being the primary place that I'm approaching both of these games, I just have to then fall back on which is a better execution on its premise, and which is a better execution on, and which is a better cornerstone of Zelda in general. And I have nothing, I can't say conscientiously that Phantom Hourglass succeeds in those areas better than Adventure of Link.
Fair enough. Well, we do have more games to rank this one against, and this is where Mike gets to get back involved with the episode after your little 15-minute hiatus while we've been hashing this whole thing out. So, Mike, we're going to go around the table again, starting with you. The next game on the list is The Legend of Zelda. Do you think that Phantom Hourglass is a better game than The Legend of Zelda, yay or nay?
This was the very first game.
Yes.
Yeah.
LOZ.
No.
Lyndon?
No, you're next, Matt.
Oh, no. I mean, it's. I already voted
okay,
no.
Yeah.
So
No. Okay, I agree. So the new ranking as it currently stands.
Oh, snap. Got crazy up in here.
Let's go. It got one spot.
The ranking as it stands: number 10, The Adventure of Link; number 9, Phantom Hourglass; number 8, The Legend of Zelda; number 7, A Link to the Past; number 6, A Link Between Worlds; number 5, Link's Awakening; number 4, The Wind Waker; number 3, Skyward Sword; number 2, Ocarina of Time; number 1, Breath of the Wild. Mike, was there an inkling of anywhere in your mind where you were kind of conflicted about whether or not Phantom Hourglass might make it higher up the list than this?
Yeah, there was a part of me that just wanted to watch the world burn. And so I thought about taking this up the list as far as I could get it today. But because of respect for the pod, I decided not to be that guy.
Thank you. We appreciate you. You still would have been outvoted, but like you could have said yes.
I know, but it would have been freaking hilarious.
You should have said yes just for the comedic effect.
I opted to not do that.
But I think it's funny because that really does say something about this season in general. Because Mike, you have been vocally more appreciative of Phantom Hourglass throughout the in both of your appearances on this season, you've been more appreciative of this game than Matt and I have, right? And I would say fairly positive on it in a lot of ways.
So yeah, Linda, I enjoyed this game. I did not have a bad time playing this game. I picked it up, went through it, beat it, all without much ado as far as lack of enjoyment, except for the Temple of the Ocean King. More it's been talking it over with you and Matt and kind of seeing the parts of it that are derivative and not necessarily well executed. That's put it farther down in my list than I would have put it. I may have originally put it, I would say probably about the time of Ice Temple, maybe over The Legend of Zelda. But based on the rest of it, I do get why you guys scored it so low, and I don't disagree with that necessarily. The caveat to that for me is I generally enjoy whatever game I'm playing, and if I'm not enjoying it, I'm probably just going to stop playing it. And so if I really would have hated the game that much, I just would have not beat it and told you, hey, sorry, donor, I'm not going to finish this game. But
that's totally fair.
Yeah, I respect that honesty. Like I really do.
You know, the funny thing about that is Linda and I had a conversation last week or 2 weeks ago where we were talking about like, what is the worst video game you've ever played? And we both had to just look at each other and go, I just don't play video games I don't like. Like if I get 4 or 5 hours into it, like for a big game, and that's not even, that's long for some games. But like if I get into it and I'm just not meshing with it, I just don't play it. So like I have to admit, if it were not for the pod, I would never have played Adventure of Link. And I never would have played Phantom Hourglass. Like, there's just no world in which I would have done either of those things. And I love the Zelda series. I have always wanted to play virtually every other game that we've played. I've either wanted to play and just never had time / made the time, but those 2 games and Spirit Tracks, honestly, I've just never had the desire to play because they are games that just don't mesh with me. So I totally get what you're coming from, and I'm really glad you enjoyed the game enough to play it. And like, obviously, because you're here and you were here on the Ice Temple, so
yes,
very glad that you're here, and I'm glad you enjoyed it. And I don't think anyone who enjoys this game is wrong for enjoying it. It just didn't mesh with me, and so many people have said on our Discord, on our social media, like I hated Skyward Sword, and they're coming at it from I couldn't mesh with the Wii motion controls. Totally get it. I did mesh with the Wii motion controls. They were fine for me. So I loved Skyward Sword from the get-go. But for people who love this game and they're like, yeah, the stylus controls just didn't bother me and the storytelling was great and it was just fun. Like, I'm really glad you enjoyed that, and you are right for your enjoyment, and I fully support your enjoyment of this thing. I did not mesh with this game on virtually any level. And I don't know if that's just a me thing or not, but it just did not hit the spots that I needed it to hit.
Yeah, and I think that's it. Every person's going to have their own set of preconceived notions of what a Zelda game is and what it needs to bring to the table for them to enjoy it. I enjoyed this game quite a bit throughout. And honestly, I would say without some of this is not a dig, but without some of the naysaying and explanation of your guys' thoughts and opinions, I probably would have ranked this game a little higher.
Absolutely.
In my personal opinion. But then talking over the points is important. Kind of what other people are experiencing and why is important to me. That did lower my expectation and desire for this game to score higher. You're also talking to the guy who finished Red Dead Redemption 2 and beat the entire game and got all the outfits.
See, I never.
So I can be a finisher, Matt. I can be that guy.
Oh, I know you can.
So that does raise an interesting question, though, Mike. I mean, what is your least favorite video game that you've ever played? Can you even answer that question? Because Matt and I couldn't last week.
Yeah, we literally looked at each other and said, "I just don't play games I don't like."
This was a post-episode conversation, by the way. So if you have no idea what we're talking about, fair. It didn't happen on the pod.
It was in Lyndon's living room.
Man, so I had several games that I have dropped off of fairly quickly after starting them. One of them was a Lord of the Rings game, like War in the North.
Yeah, I couldn't do that one.
That was like a shitty kind of half unfinished Lord of the Rings.
And also Lord of the Rings Battle for Middle-earth 2. I didn't do that one. I loved Battle for Middle-earth, the first one.
Oh, yeah.
So good.
So there have been several that I kind of pick up. Generally, like back in the day when I'm going to date myself, whenever Blockbuster was a thing.
I miss Blockbuster.
Oh, man, me too. Or like even Hastings. Like,
oh, yeah, Hastings was a thing.
You go rent the game for like 7 days. You play it and figure out this game's shitty. I'm glad
Return it immediately. You only spent $2.
Or like $5, but still. And then you're done with it and you can just move on. Or you rent Pokemon Stadium like 12 times and should have just bought the game.
But hey, now it's just on the Switch, so there you go.
I know. Hey, and me and Mavis have played like an absolute F ton of Pokemon Stadium. For you. She knows types. So she knows if I pick a Fire Boy to pick a Water Boy.
Good for her. Oh, she's so smart.
I do handicap myself. Like I'm over here picking like Tangela and Jinx.
Do you want us to bleep Mavis's name?
Nah, that's fine.
Okay.
And so I appreciate you asking though. But so like I'll go on there. I taught her types. She's not great with moves yet. Like she'll pit like, submission or like mirror move. I'm like, dummy, should have done that.
All right. Do you defeat your daughter or do you let her win?
It's healthy to occasionally defeat your spawn and teach them defeat.
It's a hard, cruel world.
I knew you were going to say that.
No, do you want to hear the story, Matt?
I do, yes.
So I was testing different games on the Switch with Mavis to see what she would enjoy playing. And we played Paper Mario, she liked. We played Mario 64, she liked.
Oh, good.
And so
she's got good taste.
She's got a good base right now. She can't quite get the hand-eye coordination to play much of them down.
For sure.
So I'll either let her play little parts of it, or she'll just watch me play, and I'll let her like pick things like, where do I go next? What's the next thing I do? Mm-hmm. And so I'll kind of like let her kind of pick her own adventure.
You're her avatar.
Yeah.
Love that.
And so I introduced her to Pokemon Stadium, and we played like the mini games where like you do like the Rattata run, like the Magikarp flop and stuff.
Oh, I remember them well.
And she kills the Magikarp flop. Like she real good at Magikarp flop. And the Rattata run, she's getting better. She's not good at the one where you eat all the sushi.
That's fair.
Well, she doesn't have like the currency in mind of like what's more points than the others.
Yeah.
So then I'm like, let's go battle. And
you need to verse her in capitalism more.
Oh, she's getting there.
Fair enough.
And so we go to the actual battle stadium. And so we do like the medium where you're like cap level 50, like pick 3 Pokemon.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, okay, baby, pick whatever you want. And she's like, oh, Pikachu's cool.
Of course.
She picked like Pikachu, Squirtle, and Rattata. I'm like, you dummy. And so I'm over here like, well, I got to pick Pokemon than her. And so I'm over here like Magikarp. I picked Machop. And then I picked...
Machop's not bad.
He's not bad, but like if you don't use him appropriately, like it's not that bad.
Fighting types
are
hit or miss.
Farfetch'd.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, fair enough. Yeah.
So she skunked me, right? And she actually like rightfully did so.
Good for her.
And so I'm like, you know what? I'm going to do this. So I like helped her pick Pokemon and kind of help her pick moves and taught her about types. And I let her win like 4 or 5 times in a row. And she's over here like, I'm the Pokemon master. And I'm like, gosh, babe, you skunked me. Like, you're so good at this. I'm like, let's play one more time.
Yikes.
And I'm over here like, okay, let's go. And
when the dealer says, why don't you stay at the table? That's when you get up and walk away.
That's exactly what this was. So, I mean, I can't even tell you exactly who I picked. I know Gengar was on my team.
Oh, that's a cheapo.
Yeah, I had like Gengar. I had Golem. And then I had... I had like Doug Trio. Like not
I mean, honestly, he's got a lot of evasive moves.
So like, not like crazy awesome, but still like I knew what I was doing. And she picked like Chansey was actually a really good pick.
Yeah.
Fairy type is good against
So
ghost type.
Fairy type did not exist at this time.
It's true.
Oh, that's fair.
So
He's normal type still.
Yeah, she was normal, but she has like the rest and healing thing. But so she picked who she thought looked cool. So she picked Jigglypuff, Chansey, and I think the last one was Gyarados, which is solid.
Gyarados is a good pick.
But he didn't quite have like the move set down.
Oh,
at
not,
this stage.
she didn't pick the dragon type moves combined with surf.
Right. You're
Okay,
right.
fair enough.
I just destroyed her. Like one Pokemon, destroy all 3 of her Pokemon, and she's just sitting there with this look on the face like, what just happened to me? I'm like, time to go to bed. Let's read a story.
I admire that so much. Your parenting style, it mimics what I imagine my own to be at some point in time.
It'll be there.
I'm very excited.
Life lessons learned via Pokemon. I love that. How long do you think it is before Mavis is firing up Ocarina of Time? That's what I want to know.
I gave her like 3 years.
Yeah, that's a good time.
She's super wicked smart.
She'll be 7, 8.
Oh yeah, 8 in 3 years.
Oh yeah, 8's a good age.
So
for Ocarina.
she's wicked smart. The problem is with controls and tiny hands. Like she knows kind of what she's supposed to do. Like when we play Mario Kart, so we have a saying, ABB, always be boosting.
Oh, that's a good one.
And so like she gets these like the stars or like the the multiple boost that's like the little mushroom with the crown on it. And she'll hit it like one time. I'm like,
no, keep going,
get
baby.
your shit
Let's
together,
go.
girl. Let's go. And so she does always be boosting. She can be like in the top 6.
Good for her.
Yeah.
That's good. It's a good place to be when you're 5.
Okay, bringing it back to Zelda real quick.
Okay, fair enough. That was a really fun tangent.
It was.
This is my daughter podcast.
Great little tangent. I loved it. We do have one last thing that we need to discuss. One last order of business.
Actually, hold on. I want to go back. No, I'm sorry, but what?
He's gonna let me finish.
What? Eventually. Why Lyndon specifically? And Mike, I actually do want to hear your personal thoughts of where you would have put this Sans pod.
Okay.
But so be thinking about that. But Lyndon specifically, why do you rank this above Adventure of Link but below Legend of Zelda? And I want to know specifically, like, what about those 2 games being Legend of Zelda and Phantom Hourglass? What about Legend of Zelda spoke to you more than Phantom Hourglass?
Because Legend of Zelda leverages open world exploration better. It has what we consider to be actual dungeons. Adventure of Link has dungeons, but they are side-scrolling combat gauntlets, right? Sure. Legend of Zelda, granted, they're like a primordial version of dungeons, right?
Right.
But they do have, they are labyrinthine. They have got layouts and everything that need to be parsed and explored. And I think... the Legend of Zelda, it basically, like when you boil it down, the Legend of Zelda is a primordial version of A Link to the Past. It is an early evolution on the top-down Zelda format in general. And I think that because of that, I give it a little bit more cachet than Phantom Hourglass because, yes, it is small. By, like if we're comparing them, it's a smaller game, but its template and the way that it does things is more enduring. Mm-hmm. And it is just like you have to give it some points for just pioneering the whole system, right?
Of course.
Like you really do. And I do think that, like, look, yes, The Legend of Zelda, it is an early exploration on all of these things, and the series has come a long way since then. I don't know that Phantom Hourglass, aside from items and just the complexity of dungeons, added too much to the basic formula. Like you've got characters, sure, but we said earlier that characters and character development aren't a thing that was happening at the time that Adventure of Link and Legend of Zelda were created, right? Mm-hmm. I just think that The Legend of Zelda is, and this may sound dumb because of course this is true, but The Legend of Zelda is a more pure expression of what I come to the Zelda series for, which of course it is. It was the first one, right?
Of course.
But I do think that it toes that line better. The Legend of Zelda, again, it's got what Phantom Hourglass doesn't have. It knows what it wants to be and it executes on that premise.
Sure.
Right? Phantom Hourglass knows what it wants to be and then sloppily executes on that premise.
So what about Phantom Hourglass to you in that same vein? Because what I'm hearing, a lot of what you said is a lot of what I said about Adventure of Link.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, what about Adventure of Link, besides it's the fact that no other Zelda game has been like it in the side-scrolling nature, the different.
But that's the thing; it doesn't.
That's it for you.
Yes, it doesn't have the premise. Like so Adventure of Link has a separate premise from The Legend of Zelda and A Link to the Past and Link's Awakening. It has a separate premise from those games, and it executes on it really well. Like it is successful at what it wants to be, but that's not why I play Zelda games.
So really, it just comes down to you feel like Adventure of Link is a game in the Zelda universe that is not necessarily like a quotes Zelda game in the vein of what a Zelda game is now post Link to the Past post.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. Fair, respect, understand. Mike, I had a question for you, which was sans pod, like sans our arguments about what we felt about the game. If you just came to Phantom Hourglass, you've never played Adventure of Link, you never heard us talk about what we didn't like about the game, where would you put Phantom Hourglass? Because you've played every game that we've played besides Adventure of Link. Would you put it above Legend of Zelda? Would you put it above A Link Between Worlds? Would you put it above Link to the Past? Where would you put it?
So I'm looking at the list right now, Matt, and so I do value your guys' opinions, and I think that they're valid.
Absolutely. But I want your opinion.
Yes. So if I would have just played this game, not talked to you guys about any of this BS, and been like, hey, I'm going to rank these games, I probably would have put this right between A Link Between Worlds. So between 6 and 7 currently. And part of that, I'm going to say, is like going into the way I play games.
Mm-hmm.
We've talked about it a little bit before. I like to fill gaps with my imagination.
Yeah.
I've done that on every game I've ever played. Like, I mean, I'm the guy that like goes to sleep dreaming about like, oh man, what's this cool side story for my Skyrim character?
Yeah.
And stuff like that. And so I just kind of fill in some of the story plot holes for this game with some headcanon. It's not a bad game, especially if you do that.
Sure.
And so I would have put it probably right between A Link Between Worlds and A Link to the Past.
Okay. Yeah. So that would put it at 7.
Yeah, that would put it as the new 7.
Okay. That's interesting. So I'm really curious to hear your thoughts on what, and look, I know A Link to the Past was a long time, so if you want to just skip this question, we can edit this part out. But like, what about Phantom Hourglass resonated with you more than A Link to the Past, which a lot of people put as the number 1 or number 2 Zelda game of all time?
Which in fairness, I feel like in retrospect is further down our list
than it should be. I really do think we probably should have put it above A Link Between Worlds at least.
I liked Link to a Past quite a bit.
Yeah.
Part of it's the way I enjoy games. I like it's a 2D verging on 3D for this game.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, it's 100% the temples for me.
Mm.
If this game, so strip both games down, 100%. Just strip them down to what the temples are.
You just want to be a dungeon crawler.
Just a dungeon crawler.
Sure.
If it's all about them dungeons,
mm-hmm.
then I would put this game higher. That's the only reason, Matt.
Got it.
This game is where I would put it. I mean, pretty much dissolve the overworld, dissolve Linebeck, and pretty much everything between Oshus.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of like Oshus.
Sure.
But everything else, just dissolve it. That's where I would rank the game. But take other games too and do that same thing. Dissolve the overworld. Dissolve some of the characters that are kind of okay,
mm-hmm.
and take them to their dungeons. That's how I like to rank these Zelda games.
I got you. That makes sense, and I appreciate that. To Lyndon's point, retrospectively, I do think we have Link to the Past probably too low on this ranking. But
yeah.
It is what it is for now until we get to the end of the pod in some unknown point in the future where we get to go re-rank the games personally and then talk about those personal rankings, which we can probably rectify that.
Yeah, long way to go until then. One last order of business. We have gotten into a groove of ranking final dungeons.
That's right. We have, haven't we?
Yeah, and we've been maintaining a list of final dungeon rankings. And look, here's the deal.
Let's just put this at the bottom.
Yes, I was so certain about where Temple of the Ocean King was going to land that I preemptively put it at the very bottom.
No, it's at the
10.
very, very bottom.
Yeah,
How dare you do what I was going to do anyway?
No, very, very bottom. This is bar none the worst final dungeon of any Zelda game I've ever played. Just, it's bad.
Guys, so I was riding a high on this game the last probably 3 hours I was playing it. And man, I had the Ice Temple. I went and had, I'm going to forget the friggin' name. Muto Island. And
Muto Temple.
Yeah, Muto Temple. Fantastic with the Cobble Kingdom.
Yep.
Great. I went to that last rendition of the Temple of the Ocean King, and I legitimately was like, am I having fun? And I kind of had to ask myself that question. I'm already there and I do it for the pod.
Yeah.
But I was kind of in that point where I'm like, I'm just ready to get done with this game.
You know, Mike, I'm really glad you said that, because prior to the final dungeon of this game, there was no question in my mind that this was going to be above Adventure of Link for me. Like, after playing the Goron Temple, the Ice Temple, and the Temple of Muto all back to back, I was like, absolutely, this game is better than Adventure of Link. This is like getting good. Like, are we going to have the conversation of, is this better than Legend of Zelda? I thought we were going to have that conversation. And then we played the finale. And I'm not going to mince words about it. I hated this finale. Like, the very final boss fight against possessed Linebeck Bellum was good. Everything else about this finale was like mediocre at best. And it fumbled the ball so hard at the end that it put it right back to the bottom. Like, I finally had gotten past the the stylus controls. I finally had gotten past the bad characterization of Link, the sidelining of Tetra. I was like, yeah, these last 3 temples were so good that we're going to have the conversation of, is this above Legend of Zelda? And then we played the finale and I was like, I cannot in good conscience put this above Adventure of Link. At the time, I said I couldn't put it above Legend of Zelda. I was still back and forth on Adventure of Link until I went and replayed Adventure of Link the past couple of days. But yeah, I think the finale just put it so on its back foot that it was really hard for me. And it's ultimately why I think the whole game fumbles on its premise, and why I don't think it's as good as Adventure of Link.
Cool. Look, I, in my best Harry Carey voice, we've covered some good ground, had a lot of laughs.
The moon's made of cheese. I like to think the moon is made of cheese.
Hey, Matt, if you could choose between being the top scientist in your field or having mad cow, which would you pick?
Oh, good. I was worried you were saying mad cow.
I don't think we've ever had an SNL reference on the show. That's a first.
Dude, so weird SNL aside, I've been playing, so I've been teaching the police academy the last couple days.
Good for you. You deserve it.
Appreciate it. And so as I'm teaching them, I like to come back from breaks with some good videos. So, I mean, there's been some Key and Peele.
Key and Peele's so good.
Some of the whitest kids you know.
Love that.
Yes. And there was definitely a few SNLs in there. And we've done a little... shit, why am I blanking on the name? This guy we just talked about.
Will Ferrell.
Yeah, so we've done a lot of Will Ferrell. His name's but what's the guy's name he's impersonating?
Harry Carey.
Yeah, Harry Carey. So we've done Harry Carey. I'm sorry, I'm just bad with words. But so there's several other ones that are really solid that have to deal with more with my job with SVU. But this one definitely made an appearance. And they're nice little icebreakers for when we come back. I'm pretty sure if the admin watch the videos that I watched to give to the academy after each one, I'd probably not have a job right now. But none of them are watching this podcast, so we're solid.
There you go. Fair enough.
Love it. Look, this has been a really great discussion. We knew it was going to be a spicy one. I'm I will admit that I have been going back and forth about my own personal thoughts about the ranking up until it was actually time to do it. But
I saw you have your little internal dialogue there.
Yeah, but I'm pretty happy with where it landed. The nice thing is that we are on to bigger and better things now that this is said and done and behind us. We're moving on to Twilight Princess, which is a game that we have maybe unfairly disparaged at earlier points in the podcast.
We did a fair bit of disparaging.
Yes.
There was a lot of disparaging.
And a lot of people are very excited for us to play this game. So,
although they were equally excited for us to play Majora's Mask up until the very last vote.
It was close. Twilight Princess won by literally one vote.
Literally one vote.
Yep. It was crazy. So, yeah. People have thoughts and feelings. Can't wait to get into it, though. Twilight Princess is regarded as one of the great Zelda games and
of the modern era.
Yeah, and I can't wait to get back into it. Matt and Mike, it's been super fun talking to you about Phantom Hourglass, wrapping up our thoughts and feelings about the game. Mike, can't wait to catch back up with you in Twilight Princess as we hop back into that game.
I'm ready. I'm going to play it. I love you guys. I'll make some Twilight Princess time. It's going to be great.
We appreciate you. It's going to be fun. Look, I'm actually excited to replay Twilight Princess. I haven't played it in over a decade.
As am I.
And look, my only thoughts and feelings about Twilight Princess come from the one, maybe two times that I played it. And I was a much younger man with very different ideals and different personality at that point. Different personality at that time. So I'm very excited to get back into and play it. Our Discord patron and a good friend of the pod, Stephanie, is very excited for us to play Twilight Princess. Shout out to Stephanie. Hope you're doing all right and looking forward to our Twilight Princess playthrough as much as we are, which I guarantee you're looking forward to it more than we are.
You know, I am excited. I would have been thrilled with both Majora's or this game. I like both of them. I have played this game through exactly one time. I did beat it, but that was approximately, 2011?
It's been a minute.
We were in college, and I was playing off Lyndon's machine.
Yeah.
And I played it and enjoyed it. I don't have a lot of memories, so I'm very interested to go back and play it because I beat this game, and I do have several kind of like, whenever you remember a dream where I remember parts of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or like a movie you've seen 15 years ago, and I know I've seen this movie, but I can't tell you what the plot is.
Sure.
Like I remember bits and pieces of this game, but overall the storyline, I remember parts of Midna's character development because it was kind of memorable. But it's going to be almost a fresh start, which is fun.
And in some ways, it's just appropriate for us to continue kicking Majora's Mask down the road a ways.
I mean, look, I will say personally, had we voted in the poll, which we didn't, we don't vote in our own polls, I would have voted to play Twilight Princess simply for the fact that I want us to cap off our 3D game experiences aside from Tears of the Kingdom, which will of course be our final game, assuming they don't release another Zelda game within the time frame that we're still recording pod. Tears of the Kingdom will be our final, but I wanted Majora's Mask to be as far down the road as possible because of how much esteem you and I both have for Majora's Mask, and how much that's going to totally shake up our ranking in the entire run of games. So I'm very excited for that.
Absolutely. Well, y'all, are you ready to get out of here for the night and to kick off the next era of Sacred Realms, a Zelda Retrospective Podcast?
We're getting into those double digits, baby.
I'm sleeping over.
I hope so.
We love you, Mike.
Can we cuddle?
It is almost midnight.
Cuddle is 100% happening.
Just a reminder that next week we are not actually kicking off Twilight Princess. Next week we are finishing Season 9 with a bonus episode moderated by Max Nichols himself, who is going to take us through a game development exercise that is common among game design professionals, the prompt of which is, if you were to redesign the Temple of the Ocean King, how would you do it? So that is going to be next week's episode. It's going to be a really fun time. The week after that, we will get into Twilight Princess. But let's get into the outro and call it a week.
Before we get into the outro, just a reminder to our patrons and anyone who is not a patron, if you want to hear any bonus episodes, we are currently working through the Legend of Zelda anime series, and we will be releasing 2 bonus episodes, one coming this month for the first half of the anime series, one coming next month for the second half of the anime series, where Linda and I watch the entire anime and then give you our thoughts and feelings about it. So if you are interested in hearing our thoughts and feelings about the Legend of Zelda anime series, please join us up on Patreon and you can get that bonus episode if you are a Master Sword patron and above immediately. And if you're a Kokiri Sword patron, you'll get it in a month or 2.
There you go. Sounds good. All right, y'all. If you enjoyed today's show and you'd like a little extra Sacred Realms in your life, you can head over to patreon.com/Sacred Realms Pod and become a patron. If you've got no rupees, it's not a problem. 5-star Apple Podcast reviews are a great free way to support us. More reviews means that more people see our show. That makes us very happy. Hylians. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Sacred Realms Pod for updates on the podcast and for behind the scenes action. Sacred Realms will be back next Wednesday with an epilogue episode to our Phantom Hourglass season. We would love for you to play along with us. If you haven't finished Phantom Hourglass, do that. If you want to get ahead of our Twilight Princess season, we would encourage you to do that as well. Twilight Princess can be played on the Wii. It can be played on the Nintendo GameCube. It can be played in its HD version on the Nintendo Wii U. And it is also able to be emulated via a variety of means, but only do that if you have legally purchased the game at some point in your life. Otherwise, it's piracy. But in the meantime, may your hearts be full. May your arrows never miss. We will catch y'all next week. Sacred Realms is an independent, listener-supported podcast, which is produced, edited, and mixed by me, Lyndon Willoughby. Business operations are handled by Matt Willoughby. Our music is generously provided by Darknuck and is available to listen to on Spotify. Finally, we'd like to thank Nintendo for continuing to create such exceptional and innovative experiences.